Down the streets of the lower district, the young man known as the main character hurried along. This was precisely the name his parents had given him, intending for him to become the protagonist of the world. Upon arriving at a shop, people who knew him immediately greeted him. "Oh, it's the main character, he's here!" As always, because of his name, he was teased, something that had been happening since childhood. But he didn't mind too much, as he genuinely wanted to become a protagonist. Asking the shopkeeper not to tease him, he inquired, "You have the game, don't you?" Laughing, the blonde-haired shopkeeper replied, "I knew you'd come, so I saved one for you." The main character was looking for the remake of the Night Saga series, Night Saga Remake. The game's story revolved around the conflict between the human faction and demons, where players could choose to play as the human hero Locke or as Zephyr Ragnaros, the Dark King's second son, traveling the world to achieve their objectives. Having completed the story of Night Saga over 10 times in his childhood, the main character knew everything about the characters, items, locations, and events. Furthermore, this was the first game released after the advent of virtual reality gaming systems. Leaving the shop, the main character headed home. Taking the small chip from the game case, he donned his virtual reality helmet and inserted the Night Saga cartridge. Sitting in his virtual reality chair, he pondered for a moment before remarking to himself, "Should I play a little? For about 8 hours, maybe?" Soon, the main character felt himself falling into a universe that transported him through matter. Upon opening his eyes and feeling the warmth of the sun on him through the tent's fabric, he wondered, did I log into the game? Well, in the game, waking up in bed is the real start. However, looking at his own body, he questioned which character he was inhabiting. Suddenly, he heard someone from outside the tent. "Don't tell me you're still sleeping, you idiot." A white-haired orc opened the tent, speaking to the young man within. "Hurry up! Don't you know you have an appointment this morning?" The protagonist stood up excitedly upon seeing the graphics of the character before him, who looked rather confused by his words. Seeing the orc puzzled by his statement, the main character realized something. Apparently, he could have actual conversations with the game characters, something that hadn't been mentioned in the advertisements. Striking up a casual conversation, the protagonist asked the orc's name, who sighed at the question. "You've forgotten already? My name is Carrick." Informing him that everyone was waiting for him, Prince Shutra, Carrick left the tent, urging him again to hurry. Recalling the game, the main character remembered that Shutra was the name of the Dark Lord Shutra Ignis's 9th son. However, without even choosing a character yet, he wondered why he was playing in Shutra's timeline. Putting that aside, he tried to open his status window. Immediately, his character window appeared, showing his character's picture, white hair and pointed ears. Confirming he was playing as the character Shutra Ignis, and seeing he was level 1 with all stats at 5 points, he wondered if he was forced to play as this character first. Normally, all characters had 10 points in each stat. He couldn't understand why the prince only had 5 in each. As he proceeded to select skills, he discovered he already possessed 2, Conqueror, of unknown level, and the main character's buff, level 1. Upon encountering such a buff, the young man wondered if it was the one he had always hoped to find. But before he could check it, Carrick re-entered the tent, hurrying him. Exiting the tent and following the orc, the main character was astonished, to the point of being dumbfounded. 2 lines of orcs awaited him. Sensing a warlike atmosphere, he asked Carrick what was happening. Telling Shutra to stop talking nonsense, the orc urged him to move forward, reminding him, "We need to deal with those red lightning bastards." Upon hearing about this group, the protagonist somberly gaped. Without even going through a tutorial, the main character was led by the orc to his first quest. The Red Lightning Orc tribe had formed an army, and together with the 7th prince and 8th princess, they had put down the rebellion. Following Carrick, the protagonist asked confusedly, "Only 10 people will join me on my first foray?" Finding the young man's behavior strange, Carrick reminded him of what he'd said the previous day. "It's just for reconnaissance. We don't need that many people." Seeing the boy deep in thought, Carrick even asked, "Did you eat something strange? You seem a bit different today." Ignoring the question, the main character waved his hand and opened a window by thinking. Excitedly, he saw a mini-map appear. With it, finding the right path would be easy. Looking closely, he discovered a secret path and wondered if there would be an event if he took it. As Karak was looking at the paper map he had painstakingly drawn, he heard Shutra's voice. "Follow me. I know a faster way." Though confused, the group of orcs entered the forest, following Shutra. However, they soon saw the scenery change. The journey became difficult as they encountered a wall that they had to climb. The protagonist did so as well, though with difficulty due to his lower stats. Soon, returning to a forest, they found a stone gate. Apparently sealed, it had 2 handles. Upon seeing the stone door, Carrick asked in surprise, "How did you know about this place?" "Prince, are you a mage?" Panting, the protagonist denied it. Looking at Shutra, Karak noticed how exhausted he was. This state was caused by his level 1 stamina, which was terribly low. As he wondered if they could open the door, the protagonist felt a surge of energy overflow within his body. Surprised, he was stunned, until he looked at his own body and a notification that read, "Your level has increased." having leveled up simply by walking left him quite surprised. Upon opening his character window, he discovered that all his stats had increased by 2 points, and he had gained 2 skill points to distribute, something incredibly powerful. While Shutra was still dumbfounded by what had happened, he saw the orcs push open the stone door, and Carrick called him, "Aren't you coming? We need to hurry!" Although he didn't know what was inside, since he wasn't alone, the main character felt it was very worth investigating. Furthermore, thanks to the main character's buff skill, if he were to fall into great danger, it would turn into a fortuitous encounter. This was precisely what it meant to be a protagonist. As they passed through the stone door, the group discovered a dark cave. Carrick, being experienced, commented to the others that the place looked like a tunnel dug by dwarves. Surprised, Shutra asked if dwarves still lived in the Dark Realm, but Carrick denied it, reminding him that they had only lived there a long time ago. While discussing the dwarves, the group found a light emanating from various shiny items, wooden chests filled with gold, jewels, and battle equipment. Sensing great luck, the orcs quickly grabbed what they desired, even rubbing their faces on the shields and axes they were thrilled to obtain for free. One of the orcs celebrated, "Those stupid dwarves left all this loot behind while fleeing." As the orcs carried the items, the protagonist examined some of them in a corner. He couldn't equip any of those beautiful and powerful items, as either his level, strength, or magic power was too low. Still, he wanted to keep some of those items and wondered if he could store them in an inventory. Murmuring the word "store" over a sword, Shutra made it disappear. Seeing the sword in his small inventory, he was satisfied. With his map constantly open, the protagonist ended up spotting several red dots, as if enemies were approaching. He hastily shouted to the orcs from his post, "Everyone retreat!" Before the orcs could react, the wall beside them began to crack. A strong explosion occurred, bringing down the wall and the orcs behind it. With the fall of some green orcs, red beings emerged. Leading a group from the Red Lightning tribe, the warlord Kai-chan smiled mockingly. "Did you really think I wouldn't know you were coming here?" Immediately, Kai-chan ordered his orcs, "Attack them!" Prepared for battle, the Red Lightning orc tribe gained the upper hand, striking their adversaries with their sharp swords. With superior agility, they penetrated the enemy formation, attacking while laughing with excitement. The protagonist, behind the group of orcs, was dumbfounded. However, with some animation, he wondered if he should at least land a few finishing blows to gain some experience points. One of the orcs accompanying him cornered a red orc right in front of him. Raising his sword, Shutra attacked, but the sword shattered upon hitting the Red Lightning tribe member's limb. Seeing the broken sword, the protagonist's eyes nearly popped out in disbelief. The orc that was struck turned, glaring at him fiercely. Being pursued, Shutra ran for his life desperately. However, in the midst of his run, he tripped over a stone. Like a ripe fruit, he fell to the ground. Unexpectedly, his health points dropped completely, leaving only 1 point out of 15 total. At the same time, the red orc approached, ready to deliver the finishing blow. Trying to shield himself, Shutra cried out in fear, closing his eyes simultaneously. However, upon opening his eyes again, he saw Carrick protecting him. Carrick hastily reminded him, "What are you doing, Prince? You need to dodge." The protagonist was surprised by Carrick, but watched him fight bravely against the Red Lightning tribe member. Seeing his own hands tremble, the protagonist tried to remind himself that this was just a game. Unable to bear being there any longer due to the mental pressure, he opened the menu. It was so terrifying that he was afraid to continue playing. However, upon opening the menu, which contained character information, along with many other options like equipment, stat windows, inventories, and skills, he couldn't find an option to exit the game. It was then that he realized, "No way, I'm trapped here now?" Terrified, he fell to the ground. As battles unfolded on both sides of the cave, the main orc of the Red Lightning tribe, Kai-chan, approached. Raising his fearsome staff, he cast a spell to make stones rise. Brandishing the staff, Kai-chan launched the stones towards Shutra, making them fly rapidly. Grinding his teeth, the protagonist feared meeting his end at that moment. However, he couldn't dodge, and the stones struck him. Shutra was thrown against a wall by the force of the impact, shattering it with his body. Feeling intense pain, the protagonist gasped for breath. With his vision fading, he saw Kai-chan charge towards him once more. The red orc raised his staff, launching another attack, which he couldn't even see before his health points dropped to 0. Upon opening his eyes again, the main character found himself in a dark, completely flat place. Looking around, he could see nothing. It was then, remembering what had happened, that he gritted his teeth in fear. "Don't tell me this is the afterlife!" Suddenly, a flash of light blinded him, and as the light appeared, a sweet voice was heard. "You are a being of destiny in this place. Advance and conquer, then make them submit and rule." A beautiful woman with golden hair extended her hand towards Shutra, commanding him. As the protagonist was still trying to understand what was happening, the flash of light blinded him once more. Thus, that person disappeared. In the cave, the battle between the green and red orcs grew more intense with each passing minute. However, the red orcs, with their agility advantage due to their smaller size, managed to outmaneuver the other orcs with swift movements, attacking them from behind, above, or from angles they couldn't anticipate. Seeing the superiority in battle being established, Kaichan smirked maliciously. He mocked Carrick and the others. "To think you'd come here with so few people. I can't tell if you're ignorant or just stupid," he bellowed to his men. "No need to waste any more time. Finish them all." It was at this very moment that a young man stood up after enduring 2 attacks. Around him, an energy of light surged, catching Kaichan's attention, who mused to himself, "What is this? Some kind of awakening?" Surprised, Kaichan watched Shutra rise even after his attacks. The protagonist had acquired the psychokinesis ability. Confused by the notification, he wondered when he had obtained it. It was then that he noticed something upon opening his status window. He had gained an auxiliary class, Conquest Knight. Seeing Shutra still alive, Kaichan roared, changing his tribe's plans. "What are you doing? Attack this bastard right now!" Carrick gritted his teeth, witnessing the prince in danger. As the red orcs charged towards the prince, Carrick and his companions stepped in front of them, shouting, "Protect the prince! Do not let him get hurt!" Surprised, the protagonist saw the clash intensify once more, with him at the center of the 2 tribes' dispute. While wondering what to do, he looked at his character information. He had never seen a class called Conquest Knight in Night Saga. He wondered why it had appeared now. Regardless of the reason, he sprang into action, plunging the broken sword into the ground with a surge of light. An enchantment echoed in his mind, as if he had known it for a long time. With a determined gaze, he recited, "The power of conquest is the power of the king, under the king's banner." As he recited the incantation, the light energy overflowed from the sword embedded in the ground and spread to his tribe's goblins. The ability cast by the protagonist provided a buff to all allies within a certain range. Filled with energy, the green orcs felt their powers surge. This power gave them the confidence to confront their enemies, eliminate every last one of them. The orcs of Shutra's tribe attacked, and with singular blows, they defeated the Red Lightning tribe's orcs one by one. The force they exerted was overwhelming, and like an avalanche, they swept over all enemies in front of them, whether with punches or kicks. Kaichan was astonished to see the enemies suddenly become so much stronger. Even surrounded by allies, he seemed fearful. Stunned, he commented, "This is utterly absurd." The green orc seemed unstoppable, rapidly closing in on him and his personal guards. It was then that he noticed the young man at the back of the cave with the sword stuck in the ground. He must be the source of that power. Kaichan would not allow him to wield this ability for long, and hurled several magic-infused stones at him. However, the protagonist felt no fear. This time, Karak moved in front of him, blocking the stones with his own body, which was so hard it shattered them. Support and defense were united. The orc would not allow his prince to be harmed. Granting Karak all the stat bonuses he could, Shutra ordered him to advance. Without mercy, the green orc charged at his adversary. Kaichan saw the energy-infused orc approaching rapidly, at a speed impossible to evade. Gobsmacked, he couldn't even process what to do. In a single blow, Karak finished Kaichan once and for all. When Kaichan fell to the ground, it drew the attention of all the members of his tribe. A cry of fear rang out among the Red Lightning tribe members, who fled swiftly, but Shutra and Karak's companions would not let them escape easily. At this moment, a notification appeared for Shutra. The merits of a great general belonged to their king. His level increased manifold, thanks to the feats shared by his subordinates. While the young man excitedly watched his level climb, Karak observed his companions. Looking at his own hand, the orc wondered what this power was. With a serious gaze, he looked at the prince, who was acting strangely, playing with the air while smiling. It was then that he thought, "Don't tell me it was the prince." Later, when the orcs returned to the village, they celebrated around a bonfire. Inside a hut, the main character opened various configuration windows, but no matter how much he searched, there was no exit game button. To try and resolve the issue, he first attempted to calm himself. He finally managed to consider 2 possibilities. The first was that he was trapped in a virtual reality due to a bug. In that case, a future update might resolve the problem. The second possibility sounded rather insane, but it was what he was beginning to believe. This place wasn't a game, but reality. The main character had seen such things happen in numerous novels and comics. He was either in a game world or a world similar to them. The setting was so realistic that he could only describe it as real. Here he found characters he could genuinely converse with and, most importantly, there were no sensors for wounds or intimate parts. Worried, he wondered what he should do if this was indeed another world, if he could return if eliminated. However, he quickly pushed that thought from his mind. Looking at his own body, he was glad he wasn't an orc or an ogre, and being a prince, he believed he would be raised in the lap of luxury. While he was still calming himself, the protagonist heard someone call him. It was Karak. When they went to an isolated spot, Karak suggested they spar. As the prince seemed confused, the orc explained, You are the prince and the commander I must serve, so wouldn't it be beneficial for your future if I knew your swordsmanship level? While he was still considering whether to accept the duel, Carrick tossed him a wooden sword. Warning that he would go easy, Carrick told him not to worry. Jokingly, the protagonist chided him. Look at this guy. Is this how you talk to your prince? Shutra took the initiative, charging at Carrick while ordering him, if you're going to fight, do it properly. The orc watched the young man approach intently, but when Shutra's attack landed, both noticed something strange. Testing again, the protagonist struck Carrick multiple times with the wooden sword, but not a single scratch appeared. The orc felt as if an egg were being thrown against a solid rock. Testing his prince, Carrick countered with a single sword swing and unbelievably sent Shutra flying. The protagonist fell to the ground, sitting up shortly after. Concerned, Carrick asked if he was all right. Despite complaining to the orc, the protagonist gained significantly from the spar. He acquired the basic swordsmanship level 1 skill. Seeing the skill acquisition notification, he was surprised, wondering how it had happened. However, on second thought, he remembered something similar occurring earlier when he was hit by Kaichan's psychokinesis. He felt as though he learned skills by experiencing them, by receiving direct attacks. Karak intended to end the spar, but Shutra interrupted him. You bastard, who said it's over? The young man stood up, gripping the sword firmly and smiled bravely. I'm just getting started. This time, Shutra advanced with confidence, holding the sword by his side. Carrick was surprised by the attack. When he tried to defend himself, he felt a greater force than expected. In their brief exchange, he observed that the boy's movements had definitely improved. He wondered why the boy had seemed so poor before, and if he had suddenly gotten better. Testing the waters, Carrick swung his sword from bottom to top. An attack the protagonist dodged by leaping back, not being hit in these last exchanges. A confident smile appeared on Shutra's face. How was that? Can you handle it now? Changing the subject abruptly, the protagonist asked Carrick what level he was. Thinking for a moment, the orc revealed that he was level 21 the last time he checked. With a few things in mind, the protagonist opened his own status window. Being level 7, he found himself somehow able to withstand the orc's attacks. It had to be said that everyone in this world possessed levels, but unlike the protagonist, they couldn't check them in a status window or anything similar. They needed to use an ability called level measurement magic to find out such information. In short, being able to see detailed statuses and strengthen them with additional points upon leveling up was a huge advantage. Using this advantage, Shutra advanced against Carrick once more. Excitedly, he exchanged sword blows with the orc. Being able to grow stronger was thrilling, and knowing he could reach far beyond anyone else was even more motivating. In the game Night Saga, the Dark Realms storyline revolved around the protagonist Zephyr becoming the Dark King to defeat his rival brothers. Many episodes occurred until the game's end, but the most important among them was the forced event of the Hunt Day. This event, which happened every 517 years in the Dark Realm, was the main event where Zephyr dealt with all his brothers at once to achieve his purpose. Zephyr's brothers also included Shutra Ignis, the prince whose body the main character had taken possession of. Currently, it was the year 512, so there was still some time until the year 517. The protagonist's goal would be to prevent this event within the remaining time, no matter what. The best scenario for him would be to become stronger than Zephyr, but that might be quite difficult. As the protagonist pondered, sitting in the forest, Carrick approached. Prince, what are you doing here? I've been looking for you for hours. Surprised, the protagonist asked if something was wrong. Carrick frowned in confusion. What do you mean something wrong? Did you forget about today's appointments? Confused, the main character heard Carrick state that everyone was waiting for him. Some flags were hoisted within the orc village. Sitting at a table for tea, Shutra forced a smile. Looking at the pair in front of him, he commented, "You guys really came early." On the left sat a girl with dark purplish hair sipping tea, while next to her was a muscular man like an orc, with hair as blonde as a lion's mane. That man, the 7th Prince Chris Moonlight, said upon hearing Shutra's manner of speaking, "Speak comfortably. We are siblings, aren't we?" The young lady beside him, the 8th Princess, Caitlin Moonlight, also said, "Brother, this is still our first time meeting in person." Even so, Chris still acted friendly. "It's all right. Just call us brother and sister comfortably." These two siblings were born from the 4th queen, Elaine Moonlight, the queen of the lycanthropes. They were the ones the main character had the most difficulty facing when playing Night Saga. However, Chris and Caitlin were eliminated a year before the Hunt Day, at the hands of Zephyr and the other sons of the Dark King. The reason was the secret behind Caitlin Moonlight's birth. She was not the Dark King's daughter, but an illegitimate one. Breaking the main character's chain of memories, Caitlin woke him up asking, "Why did you fight them and not follow the plan as I told you?" Hurriedly, the protagonist tried to state that he didn't know they would emerge out of nowhere. Shutra was surprised when the young lady stood up, walking towards him. Checking the boy's body, she wanted to see if he was injured anywhere. Annoyed by the concern, she warned him, "You're the weakest of the brothers, be more careful." Surprised to see her worrying about him, the protagonist wondered if the Dark King's children could get along so well. When Caitlin sat beside him again, Chris said, "Next time you do something so dangerous, you'll be grounded." Nodding at Chris's concern, the protagonist wondered if these two weren't too nice. Looking at the two, he tried to recall what he knew about the game. Thanks to their overflowing vitality, lycanthropes had many aura users. The main character wondered if he could use aura if he used the same method he used to learn swordsmanship from Carrick. He broke the silence for the first time, stating he had a favor to ask Chris. With shining eyes, he pleaded, "Can you hit me with aura?" Chris was shocked by the request, while Caitlin was disappointed in her little brother. A cry of surprise echoed from both within the tent. In an unknown place in the mountains, sounds of battles could be heard at sunset. Various orcs were being flung upwards, while powerful explosions occurred. Orcs from the Red Lightning tribe and Green Orcs fought, filling the battlefield with atrocious acts. A large red orc charged fiercely, even taking down members of his own clan. Various orcs from the Red Lightning tribe pursued him, but furiously he turned, finishing them off as well. The crazed red orc's arm was struck by one of the Red Lightning tribe's orcs. However, feeling no pain, he looked with an intimidating gaze at the one who dared to attack him. Before those eyes, the small orc with a fang necklace feared for his life. The next instant, the large orc punched the ground, causing an earthquake that sent everyone flying. Enraged, he bellowed, "Leave no one alive. I will reward whoever defeats the most enemies." The green orcs heeded the call, charging furiously. Like a green avalanche, they decimated the battlefield. At the same time, Shutra's body appeared in the same empty dark space as before. He once again encountered that woman he had seen earlier. However, this time there were other people there as well. A knight with fiery hair, a shadowy being in a black cloak, and a man in a mantle in the darkness. All seemed like characters who hadn't been released in Night Saga. As he wondered what was happening, the silver-haired woman approached him. A great light fell upon the protagonist, blinding him once more. When he awoke, he felt the sunlight on his face and a soft bed beneath him. Confused, he sat up, wondering if he had been dreaming inside a game. Startling him, Carrick appeared beside him, questioning, "You're awake." With the fright, the protagonist yelled at the top of his lungs. He irritably thrashed on the bed, complaining. Seeing him so agitated, Carrick praised how well he looked. The orc was still confused. "Why did you ask the princess to hit you so heavily? I figured this would happen after you begged her to hit you, even against her will." Glancing sideways at the boy, Carrick noticed something. Around Shutra, a faint energy overflowed like a mist. Looking at that energy and the notification that appeared, the protagonist discovered he had acquired aura. Carrick, dumbfounded, asked, "If you get hit by aura, you can acquire it?" Answering mysteriously, the protagonist stated that he was partially correct. The orc also asked if he had been the cause of what happened in the cave, impressed to learn the truth. Changing the subject, the protagonist asked if anything had happened while he was asleep. Orc Carrick revealed to Shutra that the main forces of the tribe had achieved victory against the Red Lightning tribe. Surprised, Shutra asked, "Main force? It was just the three of us, me, Chris, and Caitlin, who came to suppress the Red Lightning tribe." Carrick emphatically denied it, reminding him that the Red Lightning tribe wasn't small. Curious, Shutra asked who was in charge of the main force. Carrick revealed the truth. The ogre known as a one-man army, General Bandal. Upon hearing Bandal's name, Shutra almost jumped out of bed. General Bandal, as his appearance suggested, was one of the strong and irrational ones. Because of this, he was the subordinate the main character used most when playing as Zephyr. Suddenly, he realized something. This could be a great opportunity. Bandal wouldn't become Zephyr's subordinate until the year 515, so he wasn't yet his subordinate. Licking his lips, the protagonist wondered if he could make Bandal his subordinate. Knowing everything about Bandal, from the gifts and food he liked to his special abilities, the main character knew the most important condition to attract him: defeat him in a one-on-one fight. Knowing all this, he figured he could manage to make Bandal his subordinate before Zephyr did. Having plenty of time until such a thing happened, the protagonist concluded that he still had leeway. Thus, he set his first objective, to make Bandal his subordinate. Sometime later, the protagonist met with his siblings at the Catral camp. They couldn't believe it when they saw him conjure an aura sphere, mastering the basic aura emission technique in a single day. Having placed all his points into aura, Shutra happily watched the results appear. However, distributing points into aura wasn't reckless. Aura increased all physical abilities equally, so on average it was more efficient to level it up than to focus on psychokinesis. Still gaping, Chris muttered, "Could this be possible because he's a Gandharva?" Curious, Chris asked if Shutra could also map out the tunnels. Despite not having a skill for it, he possessed the minimap, so he confidently replied, "That's simple. Can you lend me some paper and a pen?" Some time passed, and the trio entered one of the tents. On the table, Shutra laid out a map of the entire region with the various tunnels. Impressed, Chris exclaimed, "No way! This is even more detailed than the maps I have." Excitedly, he placed his hand on his brother's shoulder, praising him as a genius. Since the Red Lightning tribe had been eliminated, Caitlin commented to her siblings that the others didn't know they had knowledge of the tunnels. Chris understood what his sister meant. They could use the tunnels to catch the rest of the enemies off guard. Thus, the sibling duo asked Shutra for one more thing. The protagonist once again went to the forest. Alongside Shutra, while guiding a few other orcs, Karaki asked, "Are we on another reconnaissance mission?" Shrugging, the protagonist stated he had no choice, as he couldn't disagree being the weakest of the siblings. Still, Karaki was relieved they had received reinforcements, all thanks to the merits they had obtained. Midway through their journey, some people interrupted Shutra's walk. He encountered none other than his sister Caitlin and another girl, both wearing hoods to conceal their identities. Surprised, he asked why Caitlin was wearing a hood. Hastily, she told him to be quiet. Concerned, she revealed, "We'll follow them in secret because we don't know what might happen, but I'll only step in if something truly dangerous occurs, as the merits need to go to you, Shutra." Laughing shyly, the protagonist agreed. The young blonde girl accompanying Caitlin introduced herself. Her name was Sarah, a helper. Having greeted each other, Caitlin let Shutra continue the reconnaissance mission, advancing through the forest. Soon, Shutra and his group arrived at the cave where they had encountered the Red Lightning tribe orcs the previous day. Silently, they entered the cave, with Caitlin and Sayira accompanying them. Upon reaching halls they hadn't explored before, they discovered the chests and boxes were empty. Karaki commented, to Shutra's surprise, that the dwarves must have taken everything when they moved out. Confused, he inquired about the swords they had seen earlier. The only conclusion Karaki could reach was that the swords and axes weren't valuable to the dwarves, who could make more. Little by little, they reached other chambers, and soon Karaki noticed something, commenting to his prince, "I think something's coming our way." Having heard a sound, Shutra shared the same opinion. Opening the minimap, the protagonist discovered a horde of enemies approaching, alerting the group. Immediately, he opened his inventory, where he found a potion. Shutra had already anticipated they might encounter someone, so he had prepared a light magic item in advance. Grabbing the potion, he warned Karaki, "When I give the signal, have everyone close their eyes." Despite being confused, the orc nodded. The duo looked towards the end of the corridor they were in and saw an endless darkness. However, soon, countless eyes appeared. They weren't enemy orcs, but stone spiders advancing in a swarm to attack the intruders. These monsters, familiar to the protagonist, moved in groups and possessed a potent, paralyzing venom. Seeing the spiders, the protagonist shouted, "Now everyone, close your eyes!" As the orcs obeyed, the protagonist hurled the vial towards the spiders. The vial shattered upon impact, spilling the glowing liquid within. As if activated by contact with the air, a brilliant light erupted, illuminating the entire cave as if a sun had emerged. The brilliance fell upon the spiders, whose many eyes were immensely affected. The spiders squeezed their eyes shut, hissing in pain. Stone spiders were creatures of darkness. Exposing them to light rendered them immobile. Immediately seeing the immobilized spiders, he yelled, "All units, attack! Defeat the spiders!" The orcs charged at his command, investing against the monsters. An incredible battle ensued, but thanks to the advantage Shutra created, the goblins soon overpowered the spiders. The protagonist watched the orcs fight while observing the minimap. He knew that just as stone spiders fought in swarms, there was always a boss among them, and with the minimap, he found it. Hastily, the protagonist called to Karaki, "Follow me, we're going to take on the boss." Karaki and Shutra pushed through the orcs and spiders, following the path the young man indicated. Soon, the duo encountered a giant spider that spanned the entire cavern corridor. Roaring, Karaki leaped onto it. His axe blow landed heavily on the spider's stone back. However, the orc was surprised. No damage was dealt, only sparks and smoke were created. The protagonist gaped at how hard the spider's shell was. He knew spiders were weak against fire, but he didn't know how to use fire magic yet. The spider began to stir, and with eyes emerging on its stony back, it roared at the invaders. The protagonist quickly warned Karaki, "Use fire attacks, it's weak against fire." However, the orc had no way to conjure fire there. It was at this moment that someone whispered to Shutra, "Raise your sword." The protagonist did as instructed, and impressively the sword burst into flames. Surprised, he saw magic for the first time in person. Reaching out, Caitlin asked if that fire was enough. Shutra didn't have time to thank his sister, as the spider attacked him, but without any fear, he braced for the incoming spiky leg attack. The protagonist's eyes were intensely focused on the target, but the next instant, the spider's attack landed where he stood, obliterating the ground and sending rocks and dust flying. Emerging from the dust cloud, Shutra charged forward, wielding the flaming sword. Brandishing the sword in angled slashes, he struck between the spider's eyes, leaving a trail of fire as he arrogantly passed it. The flame attack incinerated the monster. As the giant spider was defeated, the protagonist watched from the side. Little by little, it turned to charcoal, while the experience point blessing transferred to him. A glow appeared around Shutra, evolving his level. Upon opening the status window, the protagonist discovered he had reached level 9, something that happened quite quickly. Caitlin asked if he was all right, as she had seen a light. Explaining that the light was like a blessing, the young man asked his sister not to worry about him. Confused, she asked if he received a blessing from Gandharva. To avoid raising suspicions or needing to create detailed explanations, he decided to simply agree with her thoughts. Caitlin was also confused about something and asked how he had fought so well against the spider, as if he had faced one before. Scratching the back of his neck, the protagonist laughed sheepishly, stating he had read about it in a book. Obviously, he wasn't going to say he fought the stone spider while playing the game they were in. Interrupting the siblings' conversation, Karaki called the prince to show him something. Shutra looked where Karaki was pointing and found a metal door in the middle of a stone wall. The group approached the iron door and opened it, releasing a chilling air. Only Shutra, Karaki, Caitlin, and her assistant Sarah entered the hall. With a surprised look, the protagonist stared at what was inside. In the center of the round hall was a magic circle with what appeared to be a portal. Karaki grew curious upon hearing his prince comment on what was in the center of the hall and asked, "Do you know what this is?" Hastily denying it, he thought for a moment before replying that he had only made a guess. Although not entirely certain, the protagonist believed the drawn patterns looked like they were made in the style of dwarves. The protagonist had never seen a dwarf while playing as Zephyr, but he had encountered them a few times while playing as the hero. Thinking that the portal worked by infusing magic into it, the protagonist approached the crystal ball glowing atop a stone pedestal. Analyzing the crystal ball, he confidently stated to Caitlin, "Sister, I think this might be a portal." Caitlin was confused by her brother's words, but Sarah corroborated. "Looking at these patterns, it seems the prince's words are correct." Trusting Sarah, Caitlin asked if they could tell where the portal connected. Sarah didn't know yet, but believed there were inscriptions somewhere nearby giving hints. Soon, Karaki found a panel on the wall. "Prince, there are some figures here that seem to have letters." Curious, Caitlin and Shutra approached. The writing didn't look like the language of the Dark Kingdom, so the group believed it was in the dwarven tongue. Karaki asked young Caitlin if she could read what was written, but she hastily denied it. Caitlin asked her assistant Sarah, but she also denied it sadly. However, someone among them read what was written. Zishuka Mountains, Portal 2. Apparently it says here it's connected to Portal 3. Surprised, everyone looked at Shutra. The protagonist was confused, wondering aloud how he could read the dwarven alphabet. He had obtained the passive skill Dwarven Script just by seeing the writing on the wall, surprising him. Karaki asked the prince if he could indeed read it, and it seemed so even to him. While Caitlin asked her brother when he had learned the dwarven language, Sarah asked what was below the portal's destination. With his hand on his chin, Shutra stated he thought the portal activated by infusing magic into the crystal. The protagonist asked if his sister could put some magic into the crystal, but she wanted to leave the mission to him. "Me? Why? Do it yourself." However, claiming to still be clumsy with magic, he refused. In the end, Caitlin agreed to use her magic and touch the crystal in the center of the hall. The crystal glowed intensely, even more than before, illuminating the entire room. As the light intensified, a three-dimensional hologram appeared. The group quickly recognized the location before them, the Zishuka Mountains. There was a glowing point on the lines tracing the mountain, likely the location where they were. Another glowing point appeared to be the other portal connected to the one they were at. The group soon imagined that a dwarven hideout was there. Karaki thought this was a good thing, as the main force of the Red Lightning tribe was in front of those mountains. Shutra gave a thumbs up, agreeing. If they went to the other portal, they could attack the Red Orcs from behind. However, as Caitlin wanted to discuss the details with their other brother Chris, they decided to end the expedition there and return. When they returned to the Orc village and told Chris what they had found, he shouted in surprise, "To think there was a portal in that place! Shutra, you are truly a lucky charm." Laughing heartily, he gave his brother a few hearty slaps on the shoulder. Excitedly, Chris stated that if there was anything Shutra wanted, he just had to ask, as he would give him anything within reach. Shutra was impressed by the offer, but Chris, as captain and elder brother, wanted to reward him. Hearing Chris say not to refuse the offer, or he would be disappointed, the protagonist gave a restrained smile. He then asked, would it be alright even if it was a rather irrational matter? Chris became even more curious to know what he was going to ask upon hearing his question. Restrained, the protagonist asked, could you teach me the Divine Beast Fist? The request was so unexpected and irrational that Chris felt his world crumbling. Since he couldn't use weapons because his level was too low, the protagonist thought it would be different with skills. The Divine Beast Fist was a powerful martial art of fists and steps, passed down from generation to generation in the royal family of lycanthropes. Simply put, it was an S-rank martial art. As it was an irrational request, he knew there was nothing he could do if Chris refused. Crossing his arms, he shook his head. I think I'm asking too much, right? It's okay. I expected this from the start. However, unexpectedly, Chris replied to make him happy. Very well, I will teach you. However, Chris warned, I won't be able to teach the secrets of the technique. The protagonist became excited, but Chris changed his statement. I will teach you the aura, instead of the secrets. When asked if this would be a sufficient gift, he saw Shutra fall silent. Seeing him quiet, Chris thought his brother hadn't liked it, but Shutra quickly shook his hands, denying it. No, I liked it. I absolutely loved it. With his hands on his hips and a familiar smile, Chris asked, Shutra, from now on, can I think of you as another little brother, besides Caitlin? The protagonist was confused at being called a little brother. Such words carried deep meaning. It was visible in Chris's eyes. However, this was not a bad offer for him. Extending his hand, he shook Chris's hand, accepting the offer. Satisfied, Chris and Caitlin smiled, as did Shutra, who hoped they could work well together from now on. With the handshake, a notification appeared for the protagonist. An alliance has been formed with Chris Moonlight and Caitlin Moonlight. Current alliance status, normal. Soon the sun began to set, and the sky darkened over the garrison tribe of the Red Lightning. There, various orcs guarded a tent. One orc grinned maliciously as he looked at someone. It's not like you wanted to come here from the beginning, is it, princess? In front of him was the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, bound by magical chains. Of all Shutra's stats, charisma was the lowest, 17 points, compared to the 21 in which the others stood. Initially, all his stats grew by 2 points when he leveled up, but at some point, charisma began to increase by only 1 point. He wondered what the reason for this was. In the original Night Saga, appearance and charisma were separate stats. The appearance stat numerically quantified how handsome someone was. The charm stat, on the other hand, represented how much others could like the character. Since it was already difficult to have growth as good as what he was experiencing, the protagonist didn't pay much attention to it. What excited him most was being close to reaching level 10. In Night Saga, when Zephyr and Locke reached level 10, the level of their unique skills, Descendant of Darkness and Chosen, respectively, increased by 1. While excitedly wondering if his skills would improve if he leveled up, Shutra heard Carrick call him. Informing him that everything had been arranged, he asked the young prince if they should continue their journey. Looking excitedly at the orc, Shutra agreed. Seeing the smile on Shutra, Carrick asked if something good had happened, but the boy changed the subject. Soon the two approached other orcs. A full army of orcs was waiting for them. In front of them, Shutra announced, All right, let's go. The army proceeded towards the mountains, and there they entered the cave connected to the tunnels. To advance through the tunnels this time, the orc army would fight alongside various lycanthropes to deal with the stone spiders once again. While they fought, Shutra's group headed for the portal hall door. Chris, Shutra, Carrick, Caitlin, and Sarah made their way to the crystal. There, 2 lycanthropes were analyzing the crystal, and Chris asked if they had finished. One of them smiled and replied, Yes, as your highness said, this portal is connected to the Jishuka Mountains. Crossing his arms excitedly, Chris asked if the portal would work. The lycanthrope confirmed and praised the work of the dwarves who created the portal. Hearing the confirmation, Chris called his teammates to move forward. The 2 lycanthropes immediately activated the portal with the crystal, infusing magic into it. The crystal shone like a moon, and soon a portal to the mountains appeared before everyone. Shutra and Carrick were surprised to see the portal. The protagonist couldn't believe he was seeing a portal in person. Seeing Shutra lagging behind, Caitlin quickly urged him on as she approached the portal. He ran towards his sister, passing through the portal after her. The 5 team members emerged in a rocky, mountainous area. From where they stood, Shutra was surprised to look down. Below the mountain where they were was a valley with dozens of orc huts. Upon finding the enemy garrison, Chris became excited. Judging by the size of the place, Chris stated that there should be 5,000 enemies. Given this, he wanted to prioritize a sabotage strategy if they were to attack the enemy from the rear. Revealing that General Vandal would attack from the front and distract the enemy, Chris stated that they would infiltrate and burn the enemy's food supplies. After Chris revealed the plan, Sarah asked if there wasn't something strange. Chris ended up agreeing with her. There were few orcs at the base, which made him wonder where the rest had gone, worried that they might already be launching an attack. At that moment, Shutra heard a continuous noise and looked to the side. In the distant valley, he spotted a crowd, as if a battle were taking place. Chris then instructed his brother, Shutra, focus your aura on your eyes. Although confused, he did as the lycanthrope asked. Soon, a white energy appeared in Shutra's eyes. As if he had managed to zoom in, the protagonist could see the battle. Observing the battle like Shutra, Caitlin recognized one of the sides as the Red Lightning tribe, but asked who they were fighting against. Chris stated it wasn't Vandal's troops, as there was no scheduled battle. They also saw that the scale of the battle was too small to be against their troops. While they continued to talk, Shutra kept focusing his aura on his eyes. Soon he saw among the red orcs some women. With white hair and riding beasts, they fought fiercely against the orcs of the Red Lightning tribe. Surprised, he commented aloud, "Dark elves?" Everyone looked at Shutra, surprised by what he had said. Caitlin asked why he thought the orcs were fighting dark elves. Stating that those people were small and rode drakes, he thought they were dark elves. Observing what was happening from a distance, Chris stated that the other group was retreating. Wondering if the elves' commander had been captured, the group saw the dark elves hastily retreat, fleeing. Carrick loudly asked what had happened, if the battle was over. Ignoring the question, Shutra was more interested in why the dark elves were there. Upon returning to base, Shutra, Caitlin, and Chris received a transmission from Vandal. On the holographic screen, the Great Orc spoke, "I heard the story that you found the elves' portal. As expected of Prince Chris, how did you know there was a portal there?" Chris told the truth, denying having found the portal and giving the credit to the 9th Prince, Shutra. Timidly, the protagonist stated he had been lucky. Talking with General Vandal, the protagonist heard from the orc that he would eventually receive a reward from the Dark King's castle for this. Changing the subject, Chris stated they had seen a small battle in front of the Red Lightning tribe's camp, asking if Vandal knew about anything. Vandal was aware and commented that the Dark Elves had started a battle against such orcs. Confused, Chris asked if the elves could possibly be reinforcements from the Dark King's castle, but the orc stated that after some reconnaissance of the Dark Elves, things got a bit complicated, although initially the Dark Elves intended to join them. Returning to the important topic, Vandal revealed there was a problem. It seems the captain of an independent unit of Dark Elves has been captured by the Red Lightning tribe. Curious, Chris asked if this was the reason for the desperate fight of the small group of Dark Elves. Curious, Shutra intervened in the conversation, asking who the captain of the independent unit was. Worried, Vandal revealed that such a person was someone they all knew, the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, one of their sisters. Upon hearing Vandal, Caitlin and Chris were dumbfounded. Felicia Doomblade was the daughter of Sylvia Doomblade, the 3rd queen and former Dark Elf princess, and the twin sister of Sylvan Doomblade. In the game, Felicia and Sylvan belonged to the faction of the 4th princess, Anastasia Necreant, so the impression that they were enemies was strong. Confused, the protagonist wondered why Felicia would appear there, musing if she was trying to interfere to gain merit. Concerned, Chris asked the general if the Red Lightning bastards knew that the Dark Elf was Felicia. However, this was something the orc didn't know yet. They needed to confirm it. Chris wanted to know what they would do from that point on, whether there would be any negotiations. Vandal stated they would save the princess if they could, speaking with the Red Lightning orcs if an opportunity arose, but with no intention of giving up. Chris was satisfied with Vandal's answer, who continued, "I will try to gather more information and contact you if anything comes up." Thus, the trio bid farewell to the general, who ended the contact. Upon discovering that his elder sister had been taken prisoner, Chris broke out in a cold sweat. Caitlin bravely asserted that they needed to save their sister if she was still alive, but Chris didn't think it would be easy. If we try to save her, we'll be the ones getting hurt. Caitlin was surprised by her brother's fear. However, she was unwilling to give up. "I'm going to save her. I have to. She's my sister." Silently, Chris frowned. Shutra watched him open his mouth again. "I know, but..." Sometime later, some lycanthropes were summoned to guard a tent. Chris and the others were there, showing a map. "The plan is simple. When General Vandal distracts the main force, we will attack the camp from the rear. After that, I will penetrate the center of the camp and cause as much chaos as possible. Caitlin and Shutra will lead their units and complete their missions." Shutra asked if he was talking about rescuing their sister. Chris confirmed, "Yes, we will burn the food storehouse and the armory, and rescue Felicia at the same time." However, with a worried look, Chris asked them to retreat if the situation became dangerous, as they couldn't lose lives to rescue just one person. Upon hearing how Chris treated Felicia, Caitlin flared up irritably at her brother, but with the authority of a commander, he told her to be quiet. However, Caitlin refused. "Felicia is our family. How can you say that?" Seeing how the two siblings argued, the protagonist wondered what was happening. He felt as if Chris wasn't very enthusiastic about rescuing Felicia, as if something had happened between them. That night, under foggy skies in the Stone Mountains, the sounds of marches could be heard. Raising their sharp axes, the orcs shouted, "Advance, warriors! Let's eliminate the Red Lightning bastards!" On top of a hill stood Chris, with some orcs accompanying him. From the portal's exit, he observed the Red Lightning tribe's settlement. The orcs peacefully guarded the camp, tranquil, expecting nothing to happen. At that moment, Chris frowned, using his power. Hundreds of meters away, an explosion occurred outside the settlement. All the orcs there were thrown upward, engulfed by flames. Immediately, Vandal and the other orcs charged like meat trucks. With eyes red with fury, Vandal roared, "Eliminate them all!" At the same time, Shutra observed the settlement from another mountain. Karak, confused, asked if they weren't going to advance advance since the attack had begun. However, Shutra asked him to wait for the signal. The battle began intensely, with the green orcs catching the red lightning unprepared. Vandal stayed behind, observing the battle. With a watchful eye, he waited for the right moment. Suddenly, he shouted, "The time has come! Retreat!" After setting fire to the wooden walls of the camp, the green orcs under Vandal's command retreated. Observing the situation, Chris ordered the orcs and lycanthropes with him to prepare. He also nodded for Shutra and Caitlin to complete their mission. Joining the siblings, Chris advanced with the entire army towards the rear of the Red Lightning tribe. Needing to deal with the burning base, the Red Lightning orcs were dumbfounded to see a new attack. Orcs and lycanthropes attacked, launching punches like stone hammers, destroying and demolishing everything in their path. Accompanying his younger brother, Caitlin pleaded, "Shutra, be careful." Heeding his sister's request, the protagonist opened the minimap. He immediately commanded Carrick and the orcs ahead of him. "Go left. Run straight ahead and you'll reach the storehouse." Carrick led the charge, bellowing, "Eliminate them all!" Carrick was the first to strike the enemies, brandishing his weapon over a red lightning orc. A red orc as large as Carrick attacked him, clenching his fist for a punch. Caught by surprise, a look of fear appeared on Carrick's face. However, something thrown by Shutra flew and hit the orc who tried to attack him. The protagonist had used the throwing dagger skill, saving Carrick. Surprised, Carrick asked the prince when he had learned to throw daggers. Setting the question aside, Shutra advanced alongside Carrick, urging him to move quickly. He hid the fact that he had only acquired this skill the previous night. Seeing a food storage ahead, Carrick asked if they just needed to burn it. Before Shutra could order them to burn the storage, he wondered where Felicia was, fearing she might be caught in the flames. Therefore, he stated that they needed to find their sister first. Opening the minimap, he quickly scanned the area. To him, Felicia was recognized as a neutral character, so she would be marked as a blue or purple dot among the reds, who were the enemies. Soon, Shutra found something. Looking back, he directed Carrick in the direction he was pointing. The protagonist quickly entered a tent, looking around for Felicia. Soon he heard someone call his name. "Shutra?" Looking in the direction of the voice, he found a dark elf with white hair. Chained, the young woman was kneeling on the ground. Felicia Doomblade gasped upon seeing the young man. "Shutra, how did you get here?" The young woman with red eyes, pointed ears, and a braid holding back her loose hair was quite surprised to see him. However, asking her to leave the explanations for later, he rushed to the chains, trying to free her. Knowing it was dangerous there, he stated, "We need to get out of here as fast as possible." Shutra didn't just want to save Felicia. He wanted to make her favorable towards him. His plan seemed to be working, as Felicia was already looking at him with surprise and interest. Managing to get her out of the tent by unchaining her, Shutra asked her to follow him. "Let's go meet brother Chris and sister Caitlin." Surprised, Felicia asked if the two had really come there to rescue her. Confused, Shutra wondered why she was asking such an obvious question, and, with doubt, asked if there was perhaps a reason why they wouldn't want to save her. Stammering, Felicia changed the subject. Just as Felicia was about to talk about the power struggle within the family, Carrick shouted, "Prince, they're coming back!" Rushing towards Carrick, Shutra asked her to follow him. Agreeing with him, Felicia asked with a raised eyebrow, "Since when did you start calling me sister?" Looking at Shutra's back, Felicia was startled to see something flying towards him. "Shutra, behind you!" Hearing Felicia, the protagonist looked back, but he couldn't dodge the attack. The light pierced his body before he could even do anything. A wet cough escaped Shutra's mouth, as did excruciating pain. An explosion occurred around the protagonist and a fireball appeared. Before Carrick and Felicia, Shutra vanished amidst the flames. Speechless, Felicia stammered, Shutra!" In this moment of stupor, a red orc attacked Felicia. The young woman moved quickly despite her irritation. However, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed something amidst the flames. Something exploded, hitting the orc that tried to attack her, leaving her wide-eyed. Seeing the silhouette through the smoke, Felicia couldn't believe her eyes. Shutra walked into view and, with his acquired skill, mana control, and fire bow, created a bow that shot flaming arrows, the very ones that had hit him. Looking in one direction, Shutra pulled the fire bowstring, launching several arrows at the red orcs in front of him. With a smile on his face, the protagonist seized the opportunity he'd never had before. On a battlefield, he used his newly acquired skill to eliminate enemies, unleashing a volley of arrows. Upon hitting the red orcs, the fire arrows exploded, using real magic for the first time. He didn't tire, pulling the fire bow to launch arrows continuously. Even the level 1 arrows were impressive as they hit their targets, bringing happiness to the young player. Suddenly, Shutra was startled when something fell behind him. Looking closely, he realized that what had fallen near him was an ice attack. An archer mage from the Red Lightning tribe had shot an ice arrow. Looking at the archer, Shutra realized he was trying to aim at Felicia, who was running towards him, worried. However, unexpectedly, Shutra pushed her away. "Don't come near me!" As she was pushed, Felicia showed a confused expression, but then she saw a rain of ice arrows fall upon Shutra before her. With eyes that gleamed with longing, he murmured the reason he didn't want his sister near him. "These arrows are mine." A dozen ice arrows fell on Shutra, exploding into snowflakes. A frosty mist appeared, covering the entire camp, but it soon began to dissipate, revealing Shutra's silhouette once more. Just as he had thought, Shutra had acquired the ice arrow magic. However, Shutra's smile soon vanished as weakness hit him. He fell to the ground, seeing a large ice spike in his body. Having been hit by one of the arrows and unable to destroy it, Shutra's HP dropped to 13 out of his original 95, putting him in critical condition. He gritted his teeth, afraid of being hit by another arrow. But then someone appeared to help him, calling him an idiot. Looking back, he saw his sister Felicia with her arms crossed, annoyed with him. Blushing slightly, he snapped, "Who asked you to save me? You're the weakest of all the siblings. Who are you to save someone?" Shutra was surprised, realizing Felicia had misunderstood his intentions. While Felicia asked when he had learned magic, Shutra looked at the tower where the orc who had hit him was. He realized Felicia had defeated him in the time he was boasting. Suddenly, Shutra felt ice on his chest as Felicia pulled the ice arrow from him. In the next instant, he felt a comforting warmth and saw a green glow. Felicia had placed her hands on the wound on his chest, using magic. Quickly, with the magic Felicia used, the wound on Shutra's chest closed. In seconds, not even a scar remained. His skin was closed. At the same time his wound healed, Shutra received a notification. He had acquired the heal skill. Looking at his own chest, Shutra was impressed with the renowned genius mage Felicia Doomblade. Worried, Felicia asked if he could stand up now. Stammering, he agreed, thanking his sister. Before he could get up, however, they both heard heavy footsteps. A violent red orc with white hair and furious eyes advanced like an out-of-control train. Confused by what it was, Shutra, who was more knowledgeable, explained, "That's a blood ogre, a mutant subspecies of ogres." Surprised, Felicia asked fearfully if they needed to get past it to escape. Before Shutra could answer, the ogre's shadow was already upon them. The sibling duo ran desperately as the ogre pursued and roared at them. There was no way to fight that thing. With an axe in hand, the red ogre attacked the duo of brothers, who fortunately managed to dodge the blows. Shutra, looking back, questioned in panic, "How can he be so big and so fast at the same time?" Beside him, Felicia asked, "Hold him off for a while, I can defeat him with magic." The protagonist's eyes widened, asking his sister how he was supposed to do that. While they were talking distractedly, the ogre attacked again, causing the ground to erupt and Shutra to fly forward. Recovering, Shutra warned Felicia, "All right, I'll draw his aggro somehow. You prepare the attack." Felicia was confused, asking what aggro was but understood what her brother meant. The protagonist looked for Carrick, shouting, "Let's do the same thing we did last time. Get ready!" Shutra immediately opened a window upon approaching Carrick, his inventory. There in the inventory was a dagger. Materializing the dagger, he prepared to use a spell. The dagger filled with power and shot towards the ground. Shutra stuck the dagger into the ground, releasing the accumulated energy which went towards Carrick as Shutra roared, "Under the king's banner!" All the energy was absorbed by the orc Carrick's body, strengthening him. With so much power inside his body, Carrick even felt his confidence grow. He roared fiercely, preparing for battle. The red ogre was startled by Carrick's roar, who furiously charged, raising his cleaver. Carrick's cleaver fell upon the ogre's axe, creating a spark with the impact. However, the cleaver advanced, and the ogre could do nothing but use his own body as a shield and suffer. Carrick didn't stop, launching another attack, this time to the side. The attack hit the ogre squarely, like a knife stuck in a meat board. The ogre gritted his teeth, trying to withstand the attacks. As soon as the ogre raised his axe to counterattack, an illusory Felicia appeared above him. The young dark elf was alert, ready for a surprise attack. She stopped in front of the ogre's back, extended her hands, and cast the spell. Immediately, a gooey liquid appeared under the ogre's feet, making him slip as if stepping on a banana peel. The ogre fell heavily on his back, almost causing an earthquake. Seizing the opportunity, Carrick leapt onto him. With eyes full of fury, Carrick shouted, "This is the end!" Like a comet, Carrick fell upon the red ogre, driving him into the ground with his cleaver strike. The ogre could no longer endure and, due to a sequence of blows, coughed one last time. Creating a crater with the ogre's body, Carrick emerged as the victor of the battle. Beside him, Shutra observed the final outcome of the fight. Even with other enemies remaining, he had seen the most problematic bastard defeated. It was at this moment that a golden light enveloped Shutra's body, surprising him. As the light appeared, so did a notification window. He had leveled up to 10, finally reaching the level he had been waiting for. What Shutra had expected happened. One of his skills, the main character's buff, leveled up. Smiling slightly, he read the other notifications. Thanks to the level 2 main character buff, a new passive skill has been added. Smiling, he decided to open the gift box and check what he had obtained. Shutra's new skill was called Battlefield Blessing. The accuracy of ranged weapons aimed at him would slightly decrease. Shutra was excited to see the skill, which could save him from many incidents. This skill was very common in games and movies, having been seen by many people. It was how a character would run in one direction, and bullets fired at them would never hit, always just passing very close to their body. With this skill, Shutra was confident he could recreate the effect of the main character's buff. Suddenly, Shutra heard a girl's scream as several red lightning orcs emerged, returning to the camp. Waking her brother, Felicia screamed while fleeing from them. "Shutra, what are you doing? The enemies are coming!" To distract the orcs, Felicia turned, gathering a large amount of wind around her. Pointing at the red orcs, she chanted, "Oh wind, spin and rage!" A tornado appeared at her command, tossing the orcs into the air. Even from a distance, feeling the power of the wind, Shutra was dumbfounded. What Felicia had displayed seemed like magic, but it wasn't magic itself. He quickly figured it out by looking more closely at the various spiritual butterflies in the wind. Those were spirits, definitely. Even though they were a species of corrupted elves, Felicia showed why they were still called elves. Extending her hands, the dark elf created a magic circle, showing her talent not only as a mage but as a spiritual summoner. With such power, she created a sphere of wind, trapping the orcs who still dared to pursue them. From the ground, watching his sister fly and use magic and wind spirits, Shutra blushed slightly, excitedly wondering if her attack could hit him. In the starless night, a burst of light surged across the sky. As the specks of light fell, the orcs looked up in surprise. Gazing at the sky, Carrick asked the prince if that was the fire signal. Shutra nodded, reminding Carrick that a yellow signal meant an order to retreat. Carrick was confused, asking why they would retreat. Shutra didn't know either. He wondered what was happening, fearing someone was in danger. Carrick immediately asked the prince to give them an order. Thus, Shutra did. "Carrick, gather the troops and retreat. I'm going to check on Caitlin." Carrick was confused by the prince's plan. "What do you mean? Then I'm going with you." However, Shutra refused, remembering there must be a reason for the retreat order, and asked Carrick to follow his command. As Carrick was worried, Felicia reassured him. "I'll go with Shutra." Adjusting her hair, she lightly commented, "I can't live with debts hanging over me, so I'd like a chance to repay you." Seeing how the young dark elf claimed to still have some business to attend to with the damned Red Lightning Tribe orcs, Carrick agreed. Bidding farewell and asking the prince to be careful, Carrick advised that he would wait for him at the top of the mountain. After saying goodbye to Carrick, Felicia accompanied Shutra, asking doubtfully, "Do you really need to go to where Caitlin is?" Shutra wanted to check on the situation because they didn't know why the retreat order had been given so suddenly. Felicia surmised, but couldn't believe Caitlin could have been captured. Hoping nothing had happened to Caitlin, Shutra stated they would all return together if she was all right. Looking at her brother, the young elf asked why he cared so much about Caitlin. Without batting an eye, Shutra replied, "Well, she's my sister, so of course I care." He just hid the fact that he was also worried because they had formed an alliance. Crossing her arms, Felicia analyzed the boy in silence. She murmured to herself what he had said. Of course he cares, doesn't he? In one area of the camp, there were some watchtowers and tents and a lot of smoke. Red lightning orcs were rushing about, but something was stopping them. Caitlin was running among them, hitting them one by one with her fists. Against another group of orcs, Caitlin extended her hand, launching fireballs that exploded on impact. However, the monsters kept coming, and they roared upon seeing the young woman. Two red orcs advanced towards her, and she retreated, running backward. Using aura to conjure magic, she created an ice staff. Wielding the staff, she cut through the orcs, sending them flying. Shutra and Felicia, who had just arrived, were astonished to see Caitlin fighting and winning alone. Felicia smiled, mocking her little brother. "See? Just as I thought." He realized, rolling his eyes, that there was nothing he needed to worry about. Surprised to see her brother, Caitlin questioned why he was there instead of retreating. He ended up hastily replying, "I came to rescue you. To help you. But it seems I don't need to do anything." Noticing her brother's misunderstanding, Caitlin turned to look at him. However, Caitlin found a woman beside him. In the blink of an eye, Caitlin jumped onto Felicia, hugging her with immense affection. "Felicia, thank heavens you're safe." Being hugged so fervently, Felicia looked away shyly. "Of course I am. Honestly, you worried too much for nothing." Seeing how close the two were, Shutra was happy. Opening the region map, the protagonist observed the various red dots appearing. Warning the sisters that the enemies were returning, he stated they needed to retreat quickly. Asking Shutra to take the lead, the sisters stayed in the rear, delaying the enemy. Sometime later, several orcs were back in the teleportation hall. Soon, Shutra, Felicia, and Caitlin's group also passed through the portal back. Upon discovering that it was Shutra who had found the portal, Felicia crossed her arms, impressed. Caitlin reaffirmed what she had told her sister, stating that Shutra had made a great contribution to this expedition. Observing the boy talking to Carrick, Felicia quietly asked, "When did he change so much?" At that moment, Chris appeared, greeting everyone. "It seems you've returned safely." Excited to see her brother, Caitlin showed that they had rescued Felicia and brought her back safely. Coldly, Felicia greeted Caitlin's brother and her own brother. "It's been a while, Chris." He was silent for a moment, staring at her before replying, "It's been a while, Felicia." After some time, the siblings group gathered in a more secluded area of the cave. There, Chris revealed that the news reported that General Vandal's side had also won, and that Yakuzan had surrendered after seeing his own camp in flames. Confused, Shutra asked who Yakuzan was. Beside him, Caitlin revealed that was the name of the Red Lightning tribe leader, asking if he had forgotten. Joining the conversation, the elf Felicia asked if Yakuzan had surrendered, but Chris corrected her. "Not exactly, he just fled somewhere else. If he gathers allies, he could still fight in some way." Having said that, Chris stated the next step. "Tomorrow, we will attack Kairam's forces, Kaichan's older brother. If they join Yakuzan, it will be a problem." Finishing what he had to say, Chris handed the floor to Felicia, asking how she had been captured. Felicia scratched her arm, answering embarrassed, "I was studying ruins in that area, so I heard about a battle, and on my way to try and help, I ended up being captured." Frowning, Chris asked if she was telling the truth. With a climate of animosity, Felicia retorted the question, "Why? Don't you believe me?" The two fell silent, staring at each other. Sighing, Chris turned his back on his sister. "You've had a difficult day. Let's end it here." As Chris bid farewell to Caitlin and Shutra, Felicia lowered her head, watching him from behind. Orcs and werewolves gathered in the cave. Some slept, others cooked and ate together, while others tended to their wounds. On the other side, the main character observed all the skills acquired during the battle. Looking at them made him happy. However, the only one he could use in combat was his aura. As he tinkered with the skills, someone called him. Felicia, who had changed her clothes, entered the chamber where he was, asking if they could talk for a minute. When Shutra asked what she wanted to talk about, Felicia bit her lip slightly. She then walked up to him and, surprising him, pulled him by his shirt. The protagonist was surprised because, looking him in the eyes and with a soft voice, Felicia asked, "Do you want to take off your shirt?" Facing Felicia's gaze, the protagonist blushed completely. He tried to look somewhere that wasn't wrong to look and asked, stuttering, "Why?" With a serious look, the elf questioned him, "Don't you want your wounds treated?" The sudden understanding was like a shock to Shutra. Placing her hand over Shutra's wounds, Felicia released a healing energy while explaining that what she had done before had only been a quick first aid. This time, she was casting a healing spell to treat the internal wounds he had. Sitting on the ground, his hopes crushed, Shutra waited for Felicia to heal him. Suddenly, Felicia asked why his body had glowed earlier. Revealing that it happened sometimes, Shutra changed the subject, stating he had a favor to ask of her. Felicia's gaze became more serious when Shutra stated, "This is a favor that only you, Felicia, can fulfill." 3 new skills appeared on Shutra's skill tree: healing, poison healing, and disease healing. The young man was quite satisfied to obtain such skills. Thanks to Felicia granting his request, he learned to use 3 healing skills. After finishing the conversation with Felicia, Shutra met with Caitlin. He would finally be learning the Feral Fist with her. The Feral Fist was a martial art that was the symbol of the lycanthropes. Among the lycanthropes, the werewolf fists were the foundation of the divine Feral Fist. For that reason, Caitlin had personally offered to teach him such a style. Caitlin explained the technique. The Feral Fist also uses both external and internal aura. Today I'll start by teaching you basic aura control using the internal aura. At the same time, she brought her hands together, creating a sphere of aura. Under Caitlin's instructions, Shutra closed his eyes and focused on the internal aura. Very quickly, he began to feel the aura, the power of life. Such power coursed through his veins, throughout his whole body. The aura was infinitesimally close to the power of the soul, and when pushed to its limit, it became the power of the soul itself. When such power became constantly awakened, Shutra opened his eyes. The young man's body glowed and a notification appeared. He had acquired the level 1 passive skill, Protagonist's Body. The acquisition of the skill was quite surprising. Looking at the skill's information, Shutra discovered that it drastically increased the training efficiency of skills learned physically. When the skill evolved, the skill traits for its levels would be unlocked. Mouth agape, Shutra came across another overwhelmingly powerful skill. Besides this skill, he also received Extreme Magical Body, which increased the efficiency of magical power, and the Hero's Blood, which increased the efficiency of trained divine power. Such skills were as good as the passive skills of Zephyr and Locke, the main characters. In addition, there was the matter of the skill traits that could be released. This seemed to be a system where new functions were added with each level, something completely new. Shutra couldn't help but smile excitedly. Confidence overflowed in him, who was originally called main character, as he now knew he had become a protagonist. Caitlin woke the young man, however, asking why he was staring into space and telling him to stay focused. As soon as he apologized, Caitlin stated that they would return to Feral Fist training from the beginning. As soon as he acquired the Feral Fist skill, Shutra executed it, making the aura appear on his fists. Caitlin was really impressed to see him execute the movements of the technique so quickly. This was incredible. Despite his hands being empty, Shutra felt that he was holding something. This was the power of the feral fist. Just as they were about to proceed to the next step, a werewolf ran to interrupt the pair, looking for the princess. "We have a big problem." The siblings' attention was drawn by the hurried call. They met with Chris, who promptly revealed Kairam's forces have disappeared. At the news, the group became confused and surprised. To Chris, Kairam must have discovered their strategy. Upon hearing her brother, Caitlin asked if he had a new plan. Pointing to a spot on the map, he stated, "According to the information provided by General Vandal's side, it seems that Yakazan and Kairam will meet here." Hearing from Chris that there was a high chance the location was correct, Shutra took the floor, stating that they needed to make a decisive move. Chris nodded and declared, "We will join forces with General Vandal. We will face the Red Thunder tribe in an all-out war alongside the main army. In the main camp of the forces suppressing the Red Lightning tribe." A meeting took place the next day. Vandal, upon meeting with Prince Chris, praised him for the good work. Greeting the general for the first time in a long time, Chris praised him. "You are the same as always, General." Vandal also greeted Princess Felicia, next to Chris asking how she was. However, she cut the small talk, worriedly asking where her subordinates were. Vandal reassured her, stating that they were all fine. Shutra watched the general's interaction with the pair. Vandal had been the character he had used the most in Night Saga. Perhaps that was why he felt that even his face was familiar. In an attempt to interact, Shutra approached the general, extending his hand. "Good to see you, Vandal. I am Shutra." Vandal looked at him for an instant and extended his finger toward him, greeting him this way. "Good to see you too, new Prince Shutra." That night, Shutra dreamed of a woman identical to Felicia. A golden power enveloped her, making her divine. One of her red eyes, however, had turned blue like the sky. In front of Felicia was a knight, with dragon-like armor that covered her whole body and hair on fire. The woman who looked like Felicia noticed the presence of that woman, who stared at her with her sky-blue eyes. In front of the two was Shutra, curiously watching them in front of him. As soon as he saw them, Shutra felt that there were two different energies that represented them. In the first, conquest. In the second, war. It was upon encountering such an image that the young man woke up, confused. He remembered the dream. Shutra was sure he had seen the woman who looked like Felicia before, but he had never seen that woman with red armor. In this moment of confusion, Karak opened the tent, calling the young prince to start moving. Upon leaving the tent with Karak, Shutra came across the orcs, who were already organizing the items they would take to battle. In this war mission, Shutra had been assigned to the left flank, Vandal would be in the center, while Chris and Caitlin would be on the right flank. The Dark Elves, with their superior mobility, had been assigned to stay in the rear, in a separate department. When the advance began, time flew by in the blink of an eye, under the red sky. When Shutra realized it, he was already in front of the battlefield, facing thousands of enemy soldiers. Shutra stood among the orcs and werewolves, facing the army of red orcs, commanding the allied army. Vandal stepped forward, shouting, "Everyone, assume combat positions. Let's teach these bastards what it feels like to feel pain." The great red orc raised his axe, roaring, "All forces advance!" Under Vandal's command, green orcs and werewolves advanced furiously. The orcs of the Red Lightning tribe stood ready in front of their army, carrying axes and wooden shields, waiting for the clash. They smiled maliciously. Suddenly, in the middle of the Red Orc army, a large explosion occurred. Vandal looked back, dumbfounded, trying to understand what had happened. Vandal and the green orcs stopped as they came across something much bigger than them. There was a furious mammoth with volcanoes on its back in the Red Lightning army. Dumbfounded, Vandal recognized such a monster, the swamp mammoth. From the volcanoes on the mammoth's back, explosions occurred. It shot several explosive rocks that fell on the green orc army, exploding. The powerful and inevitable explosions threw the green orcs in all directions, causing a tremendous amount of damage. Shutra and Karak were shocked by the devastating situation. Dumbfounded, Shutra stated, "We were deceived. These bastards knew everything from the start." With several mammoths in their army, the Red Lightning tribe secured the upper hand in the battle. The swamp mammoths, as the name suggested, were monsters similar to mammoths, but their sizes could not be compared to normal monsters. In short, this was a true monster that honored its name. In front of this red monster with furious eyes, Shutra still did not despair. However, suddenly new enemies appeared. Lizardmen, with their sharp claws and long swords, emerged from behind the allied army. The green orcs looked back with frightened eyes. Shutra gritted his teeth upon seeing new enemies. The green orcs had to deal with the new enemies, who savagely caused chaos within the army, breaking their formation. A lizardman spared no effort and jumped toward Shutra, showing his sharp claws and fangs. However, Karak appeared at the last second. Attacking the lizard from behind, Karak promptly shouted to Shutra, "Pay attention! One wrong move and we will all be defeated here." The protagonist nodded, knowing he was right. He was not in a game. Chris used his fists to invade the Red Lightning Orc army. Gritting his teeth, he cursed, "Damn it, don't tell me they already knew everything and prepared to play with us." Caitlin quickly approached her brother, stating that it might be better to retreat, to seek a new opportunity in the future. Chris couldn't believe she was suggesting such a thing. Making a mistake at such a moment would cause them to suffer great losses, possibly even being annihilated in battle. But Caitlin made him realize by reminding him that, at the rate the battle was going, only more casualties would happen. She firmly asked, "You need to make a decision. Now is the right time to retreat, brother." Even against his will, Chris bellowed, getting the attention of the troops. From the top of the hill where he was, he proclaimed, "Those who can use magic will stabilize a defensive line in the rear and buy as much time as possible. The rest will quickly form groups to retreat. Survive and return no matter what." In the center of a canyon was a village formed by the orcs. There, they were being healed by the dark elves who had joined the group under Felicia's command. Chris hit a table, blaming himself. "I was too complacent. I should have been suspicious, even if just a little," but Vandal didn't blame him. What was done could not be changed. The general saw the only options as withdrawing the troops entirely, or requesting reinforcements from the king's castle. Gloomily, Chris agreed. He knew he couldn't drag his subordinates to their graves in vain due to a desire for glory. Before they made the decision, Felicia interrupted them. "I have an idea." Taking the floor, Felicia stated that the reason they had gone to that area had been because of the exploration of the ruins. The destination of the exploration is here, on the edge of the Jishuka Mountains. Shutra knew how Felicia was an excellent mage, but even in Night Saga, she was not a character with a focus on combat. Her traits were geared towards research and exploration of ruins. Felicia opened the map in front of them and, exploring it, came to say, "For a long time, I have been looking for a ruin in these mountains, the ruins of 1,500 years. The lair of the earth dragon Enkidu. Enkidu, a dragon born from lava, employed countless guardians to protect its lair and its treasures. According to Felicia, among the guardians were the dwarves who lived in the Jishuka Mountains, who manufactured countless weapons to protect the lair." The group's attention was even more gripped when she mentioned the dwarves. Creation, the thunder-forging anvil. Not only could it control the chimeras created to serve as guardians, but it was a weapon capable of casting magic on a war scale. Felicia struck the map with conviction and showed her desire for the anvil and its guardians, declaring, "If we want to win, finding this lair is our only option." Under Vandal's gaze, Princess Felicia reminded them that she had gone to that place precisely to find such a lair. The general asked if she knew the exact location, but she denied it. Sighing, Chris solidified the information as useless. He also reminded them that they did not know what the enemy's strategy would be, so he did not want to risk the lives of many in search of a treasure. Felicia gritted her teeth, annoyed by his decision. At that moment, someone stated with conviction, "The thunder-forging anvil is definitely here." To Felicia's surprise, it was Shutra who had taken the initiative. The protagonist had seen the anvil when playing as the hero Locke. Using that memory, he declared, "When I was studying the dwarves' crypt, I found a story. I trust Sister Felicia." The young woman's eyes widened upon hearing the word sister. Using the opportunity created, Shutra imagined he could score some points. Chris, however, wanted to go against the idea. "Shutra, it's not about who trusts who right now. We can't waste time here." The protagonist gritted his teeth, annoyed at how persistent Chris was. He then pointed to a corner in the mountains. A similar legend has been passed down by the Gandharva tribe in this place. With conviction, he pointed out, "The entrance to the ruin is probably in this vicinity. If I go and look around, I'm sure I can find it. I will take responsibility for what happens if I fail. So please trust me this time." 6 ghost mounts crossed the sky. The flying horses summoned by Felicia carried Shutra, Felicia, Caitlin, and the others. The protagonist had managed to convince them to go in search of the ruin. Karak, worried, shouted to Shutra, "This is not a joke! Stay strong, Prince!" But Shutra was very confident that he would not fail, as he had played this game for a long time. Extending his hand, he opened the map of the location. At the speed they were traveling, he believed they would reach the entrance to the ruin in an hour. With the minimap, it would not be difficult to find the place. However, he believed the real problem would be guiding the group. Frowning, he tried to think of a plan. However, he let time pass as they traveled, waiting for the right moment to act. When it was time to speak, he stated monotonously, "I looked closely at the tunnel maps when we activated the portal. There seemed to be a certain consistency. If I combine the characteristics of this terrain with those of the tunnels, I think I can approximately figure out the location of the anvil." While he wondered if his acting had worked, everyone stared at him. They asked in doubt, "What did he just say?" In the end, Felicia spoke up. "Go ahead, Shutra. I understood what you said, so take the lead." Surprised that his explanation had been plausible, Shutra asked everyone to follow him. Despite agreeing, Felicia frowned, puffing with envy. Soon, everyone was dumbfounded when they arrived at the location indicated by Shutra. It was just a stone mountain, the end of the line. Confused, Karak asked, "Are you sure the entrance to the ruin is here? No matter how I look at it, it doesn't seem like the right place." Smiling, the protagonist questioned when he had said he would take them to the entrance of the ruins. Confused, Karak just stared at what he would do. Looking at the stone wall, the protagonist turned to Caitlin. "Sister, can you break this?" Shutra stated that he would be counting on her. Not so confident, she said she could try. Observing the size of the wall, Felicia exclaimed in disbelief, "Are you saying the thunder-forging anvil is in this stone cliff?" With a smile, Shutra confirmed, "According to my calculations, we need to break here to find the Guardian's dungeon." While pointing to the wall, stating that Caitlin needed to destroy it, Felicia confronted him. "You idiot. How is she supposedly going to break this with her fists? Do you think she is some kind of siege weapon?" Hearing Sister Felicia, the protagonist scratched his head. It was Felicia, however, who acted. Extending her hand, she began to gather a large amount of energy from the atmosphere. With a confident smile, she stated while forming a sphere, "For ruin explorers, destroying and exploring are practically prerequisites." The sphere of wind was launched against the wall, exploding the gorge. Fissures spread across the stone cliff, which began to collapse. Soon, a large explosion happened when the entire wall fell. In front of the group, a hole appeared in the wall. Upon seeing the cave, Felicia was dumbfounded, incredulous. Stone pillars and a large hall were revealed before her, who murmured, "Did we really find it just like that?" Upon entering the stone hall and finding a coffin, they believed that the thunder-forging anvil must be inside it. Curious, Karak asked if they just needed to break it, but Shutra stopped him. "We can't break it recklessly. If we do something wrong, we might damage the anvil inside." Hearing his brother say that there must be a mechanism to open the box, Felicia watched him in silence. She analyzed the surroundings, noticing the statues that surrounded the tomb, and commented, "Don't these statues look strange? Of the 9, 3 are holding weapons, while 6 are not." Caitlin agreed with her sister and asked if they should give weapons to the others. Felicia doubted it was that simple. She realized that the weapons wielded by the statues were made by dwarves, so they would probably need to place dwarf-forged weapons in the hands of the others. While they wondered where they would get such weapons, Shutra presented himself holding some. "It happens that I have 6 of these swords with me." He had collected the swords he found in the first cave investigated with Karak. He couldn't believe that those weapons, which he couldn't equip due to his level, would now be useful. Karak, confused upon seeing the swords, asked the prince how he had stored them in his backpack. Annoyed at how perceptive Karak could be, the protagonist smiled awkwardly. "Does it really matter? More importantly, help me. They are heavy." Soon, all the swords were positioned on the dwarf statues. A glow appeared in the air, and the eyes of each statue lit up. Just like in them, a light appeared in the coffin, illuminating the entire hall. The lid began to open, revealing the interior. The group approached, eager to find the anvil. They were dumbfounded when, as the coffin disappeared, a large anvil was truly revealed. The thunder-forging anvil. Felicia saw the large anvil and put a hand to her chin, confused. "Wait," she said. "According to the records, a final activation procedure is required." She told Shutra and Karak to stay put, while the others were to move to the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions around the anvil. From their various locations, Felicia intended to infuse mana into the disc below the anvil, moving clockwise and slowly increasing the amount of mana. Soon, everyone was in their designated spots around the giant anvil. Felicia was the first to release her wind magic, asking everyone to focus and do the same. Their mana flowed toward the anvil in the center of the hall. Once the circle was established, Felicia shouted, "Shutra! Increase the amount of mana you're releasing." Shutra obeyed, and Felicia reminded everyone not to let their guard down. The anvil was soon encased in a crackling layer of mana. Shutra gritted his teeth, giving it his all. With the massive amount of mana being released, a bolt of lightning shot toward the sky. The mana was completely consumed, and a powerful wind swept through the room, changing the scenery. In the wind, countless dwarves appeared around them. They were joined by mammoths, other gigantic beings, and even flying creatures. Shutra then heard a voice in his mind. "Listen, my returners." He looked up, and a shadow immediately covered him. He was dumbfounded to see a gigantic dragon in the sky. That was the guardian of the great Enkidu's lair. The protagonist knew that this was a gatekeeper dragon from the game Night Saga, which existed between the Dark Realm and the human realm. The instant he saw the creature, Shutra snapped back to the anvil hall. He still remembered the image of the black dragon and realized it wasn't a guardian, but perhaps the earth dragon Enkidu himself. When Shutra got to his feet, Felicia asked if he had also had a vision of a giant dragon with lava flowing through its veins. Karak joined in, saying he had seen one too. The trio realized they had all had the same vision. Felicia wasn't sure what it meant, but looking at the energy-filled anvil, she figured they would find out once they used it. Felicia approached and touched the anvil. The clear mana surrounding it immediately transformed into a dark power that exploded like a flame. Like a powerful attack, the shadowy power tried to possess her. Shutra quickly tried to stop his sister. As he pulled her away from the anvil, he felt something different. The dark power exploding from the anvil enveloped them both, pushing everyone else away. Worried, Karak and Caitlin shouted at the pair in danger. Shutra screamed so loud that the color drained from his eyes. The mana from the Earth Dragon and Enkidu conveyed a feeling of conquest. This was the trial for the uninvited. This was the conquest, an act of governance. The mana from the anvil was doing just that, trying to govern the duo. Caitlin and Karak watched, worried and confused, as the energy slowly diminished and then extinguished. In Shutra's hand, the anvil had changed shape, becoming a hammer of shadows and powerful mana. Caitlin was shocked to see one of Shutra's eyes transform into pure dark mana. At the same time, something was happening at the camp in the canyon. Someone was watching them from the mountains above. It was a red lightning orc with a spyglass who laughed as he observed the people below. "Heh, you idiots," he said. "You think we wouldn't notice you hiding here?" He then asked a person next to him what to do, attack immediately or something else. He was asking Yakuzan, the great chief of the Red Lightning tribe, for the final order. Yakuzan looked back at his large army and commanded, "Everyone, get ready. We're going to wipe out the remaining bastards." Under the orc chief's command, the entire Red Lightning tribe, accompanied by their giant mammoths, began to move. The green orcs were patrolling in the temporary camp they had set up until they were surprised by a glow in the sky. A rain of fireballs was happening, targeting the camp. The fireballs caught the orcs unprepared, exploding among them. The orcs could not avoid the attacks and suffered from the explosions. While they worried about the meteors, red orcs and enraged mammoths emerged, invading the gorge. The red orcs' ambush had begun. Stepping out of a tent, Chris was shocked to see what was happening. He gritted his teeth in worry, as neither Caitlin nor Felicia were there to help. Given this situation, it was extremely likely they would be annihilated. Explosions continued to happen in the gorge, which Yakuzan was observing. He smiled maliciously, scoffing, "Damned fools, you came without knowing the region, and look at you now." Yakuzan ordered the various orc shamans near him, "Finish off everyone else." However, the shamans began to tremble. Their hands didn't want to move. And why? Energy suddenly fell upon the mammoths. Their eyes changed, focusing on a new target. The red orcs present in the ambush noticed a change happening. The mammoths began launching their fireballs against the red orcs, a twist in the battle. Yakuzan and the other orcs above the gorge watched what was happening. Stunned, Yakuzan wondered what was going on and why the mammoths were attacking them. Chris, who was preparing for battle, saw the mammoths change in behavior. Like Yakuzan, he was shocked, not understanding what was happening. However, a thought crossed Chris's mind. Shutra's group really had found the anvil. Just as he thought, Shutra was now holding a magical hammer of dark energy. Seeing the energy hammer constantly deforming, he wondered what exactly it was. Someone approached Shutra answering, "That is the Thunder Hammer, equivalent to the anvil. It seems Enkidu has chosen you." Being carried by the assistant, Felicia explained to Shutra. The protagonist was confused, and while he didn't know what to do, Felicia instructed him, "Use it! What are you waiting for?" The protagonist held the hammer firmly. Enkidu's mana had already taught him how to use it. The moment Shutra felt himself in a lifeless sphere, he learned that he should conquer, subdue, and force obedience. Domination was necessary. This was the method to use the anvil that created thunder. Raising the hammer above his head, Shutra imagined what he wanted to do. Let's start by dominating the swamp mammoths. As soon as Shutra hammered the great anvil, a pillar of energy shot up into the sky. This same energy reached the mammoths, beginning to control them. The mammoths began to focus their cannon attacks against the red orcs, destroying the great army that had been assembled to ambush the group led by Chris. Screams of despair spread. The red orcs didn't know why they were being attacked. Amidst the swamp mammoths' attacks, the red orcs realized that another front had emerged to attack them. Bandel had charged into the enemy army like a runaway train, crushing every single enemy with his heavy fists. Bandel observed how the mammoths were attacking the Scarlet Lightning tribe and figured that the prince and princess had succeeded. Bandel commanded the green orcs and raised his voice. "Now is the time. Eliminate everyone. Don't let anyone escape." The green orcs charged into the fight, taking advantage of the Scarlet Lightning tribe's broken spirit. Their attacks became increasingly forceful. On top of the gorge, Yakuzan watched his army begin to lose. He hastily asked a shaman, "What is happening? Why are the mammoths acting like this?" However, the orc shamans had no answer. They only knew that a large amount of mana was controlling everything. According to the shaman, the best thing would be to retreat and wait for another chance. But that possibility was not something Yakuzan wanted to accept. stopped. While he was thinking about what to do, an explosion happened near him. Chris, like a comet, had fallen onto the gorge to attack the Scarlet Tribe's rear lines. With a fierce look, he stated, "It looks like this is the end for you. If you surrender, I'll make sure you don't suffer as much." Yakuzan was shocked to see the Beastman. Furiously, he raised his axe, trying to use his large body to pressure Chris. "I'll finish you off right now." Chris's eyes gleamed as he faced the enemy. With the art of the Beast King's fist, Chris charged, using his claws to pierce through and eliminate Yakuzan with a single blow. Seeing the army's leader fall before Chris, the Scarlet Lightning Tribe shamans were terrified. As soon as the chief was eliminated, they tried to flee. Waving his hand to clean it, Chris looked around, realizing they only had a few remaining flies to deal with. Chris acknowledged that, if not for Felicia and Shutra, they would have been in serious trouble. He looked up at the sky, hoping nothing bad happened to them either. The battle was being watched on a holographic screen. Karak seemed shocked to see the current scenario, where the mammoths were helping. Gasping from exhaustion, Felicia confirmed what Karak still didn't know. Thanks to the anvil, it was possible to control all the treasure guardians. Felicia was ready to change the subject and talk about what they could do with the anvil's power when her words became more spaced out and weak. She staggered. Felicia's assistant quickly held her, worried about the princess's condition. Felicia gritted her teeth, asking them not to worry about her, as she only needed some rest. Since everything had been finalized, they thought about organizing everything to leave. However, upon looking around, they discovered something unexpected. Shutra had disappeared. In a forest area, Shutra continued to evolve. He looked at his character information, seeing how much he had improved, and thanked Enkidu's relic. Among the notifications, Shutra discovered that his conquest level had also increased. This last notification caught his attention, and in the character information, he discovered a skill with a crown symbol, Conquest, which was now at level 2. Under that skill, another one had also evolved, the King's Banner skill. Discovering that both skills had leveled up excited Shutra. Although he didn't fully understand what it meant, he knew it was a good thing. Also discovering that he had obtained a skill called King's Knights, Shutra wondered what it did. This was a skill that sounded like some kind of summon. While Shutra was observing his information, he heard someone call his name. Looking around, Shutra met Caitlin. The protagonist scratched his head, approaching his sister as he apologized. "Oh, I left without saying anything." Before he could apologize, Shutra was hit with a big knuckle chop. Caitlin strongly scolded him. "What were you thinking? Disappearing without saying anything, Shutra?" Still, because he was safe, Caitlin let the matter go and asked him to hurry back, as they would have to camp in the forest for the night. His sister's comment confused Shutra, as he thought they would return straight to the base. Caitlin, however, revealed to the protagonist that there had been a problem. While Shutra remained confused, Caitlin explained, Felicia lost consciousness. Currently, Felicia was passed out, lying on the hard ground with a look of suffering. Caitlin revealed that she believed, due to everything that had happened, Felicia was still very exhausted. Felicia's assistants were trying to use healing magic to wake her up. Caitlin recounted that after collapsing, Felicia had said she would be fine after resting, but they didn't know exactly when she would wake up. Caitlin was worried because without Felicia, they couldn't even summon the phantom steeds. Therefore, they needed to continue monitoring her condition. The protagonist nodded to everything Caitlin said and internally wondered if Felicia would be all right. The night lingered in the forest outside. Inside the temple, Karak was sleeping like a rock, as were the others, while Shutra leaned against a pillar, wide awake and thoughtful. Shutra wondered if his stamina had been recovered after leveling up. Strangely, he didn't feel tired at all. While Shutra was considering whether he should stay awake until the next morning, he noticed something. He looked around and remembered the ruins they were in, as well as the hidden weapons and treasures that should be nearby. There should also be traps and guardians, but since he had the hammer, Shutra felt confident in looking for them. Eyes on the hammer, he wondered what would happen if he used the governor's power in the ruins. The anvil's power only worked outside, but inside the ruin, it manifested absolute power. In other words, he had already obtained an entrance pass to anywhere in the ruins. Karak continued to sleep peacefully when Shutra began to move. However, someone started waking Karak up. It was Shutra himself, asking the orc to accompany him. The duo walked through the ruins, lit by torches on the walls. Karak was worried about walking around as something bad could happen, but Shutra reminded him, "I'm the governor of this place. What are you worried about?" As they opened some doors, Shutra asked Karak to think about how many weapons must exist in that ruin. As soon as they reached a new room, Karak was speechless. He spotted a huge winged monster sleeping as a guardian in that location. Shutra was able to identify the monster just by seeing it, a griffin-shaped golem. Karak could only think of it as an extremely powerful monster. Hearing the young man say that if they had walked around carelessly, they could have been attacked, Karak became worried. Karak preferred not to fight that monster, and with him in the lead, the duo tried to avoid the griffin golem. Soon they entered a new room and immediately found enormous quantities of treasure. Gold chests, armor, weapons, and all kinds of jewelry. Karak picked up a giant armor, impressed by it. Shutra wasn't as excited, but praised it to make Karak happy. By using a special energy in his eyes, however, Shutra was able to see a small layer of mana on that armor, which turned it into magical armor. Shutra offered the armor to Karak, who gasped, "Can I really keep it?" The protagonist agreed, as it was too big for anyone but the orc to wear it. Karak hugged the armor as if it were something precious to him. Shutra walked toward a table, finding some golden coins. Picking them up and seeing a dragon emblem, Shutra recognized them as ancient coins. These were items that would be best kept in the inventory first. While gathering the coins, Shutra told Karak to put everything of value away for now. Shutra then noticed the presence of a chest that emanated gold. Curious, he approached and opened it. At the same moment, Shutra felt an evil energy coming from a corner of the room. An extremely malicious energy was exhaled from a stone door that had just opened. However, that hidden space caught Shutra's attention. The protagonist's eyes shone, as he definitely felt there was something valuable there. The protagonist proceeded to the new secret chamber, discovering a flame that had appeared in the center of the room. At that moment, a dark voice arose in Shutra's ears. "Yo!" Amidst the flames, a form seemed to emerge. Shutra recognized the mana exuding from that body. Even though it was the first time he had seen it, its name surfaced in his mind. He murmured, "Enkidu." Those were Enkidu's gauntlets. Earthquake. As Shutra observed the gauntlets, it spoke to him, "Oh, valiant knight of conquest." Slowly, Shutra approached the gauntlets that called out to him. The protagonist reached out to touch them but was repelled. Several notifications popped up before him. Your level is insufficient. Your mana is insufficient. Your mental form is insufficient. Your strength is insufficient. Surprised that he couldn't hold the gauntlet yet, Shutra didn't know what to do. Enkidu's gauntlet suddenly began to shine, and a voice emerged. "Permission granted." A new notification appeared. "Earthquake has recognized you as its master." The gauntlet, with the face of a dragon, continued to shine, undergoing modifications. The notification confirmed, "The user of Earthquake has been changed to Shutra." The protagonist's hand began to glow, and as the glow disappeared, the gauntlet formed around his fist. The brightness forced him to close his eyes, and when he opened them again, he saw the gauntlet on his fist. He was surprised. It really recognized me as its master? Shutra's strength, mana, and stamina points each increased by 10 points. The protagonist was impressed, as this was a large amount of stats obtained just by equipping the item. Shutra already imagined what would happen if his level increased further, as the equipment bonuses adapted to low levels. The thought of the gauntlet becoming even more powerful excited him. Looking at the information for Enkidu's gauntlets, Shutra discovered that the item was even better than he expected. Karak joined Shutra in the secret chamber and, surprised, asked what he was doing. Shutra was startled by Karak's appearance and turned around hastily. "How long have you been here?" Karak revealed that he had seen everything that happened with the gauntlet that appeared out of nowhere. The protagonist, after hiding the gauntlet, scratched the back of his neck, a little awkward. He didn't want something like the inventory to be exposed to others. Karak, however, knew that important things could cause problems if they were known to everyone. Smiling, he beat his chest and swore, "Don't worry, I won't say anything and will take this secret to my grave." While Shutra was touched by Karak, the rock-headed orc looked around, asking if they should head back now that they had taken everything they needed. Seeing how the stubborn orc wanted to leave, Shutra smiled, acknowledging his loyalty. As they returned, they passed through several corridors with small piles of gold coins. Something caught Shutra's attention, and he told Karak to stop and wait a minute. Shutra pointed for Karak to look in the same direction. A glow emerged amidst the gold, and with a smile, Shutra stated that it was exactly what they needed. Sometime later, a potion was poured into Felicia's mouth. The elf's body shone intensely. Felicia slowly began to wake up, opening her eyes. Shutra was holding his sister in his lap, the potion in his other hand. "Felicia, you're awake?" Felicia didn't understand why she was seeing Shutra. Caitlin quickly approached, extremely relieved. Felicia still didn't comprehend what was happening. Wiping away a tear, Caitlin revealed, "Shutra brought a mana recovery potion." Confused, Felicia asked where he had gotten such a potion. The protagonist pointed to the surroundings, reminding her, "Did you forget where we are?" Felicia, stunned, remembered, "We're in the ruins." With a confident smile, Shutra boasted, "And don't forget that I'm the governor of these ruins." Shutra asked Felicia not to worry and to rest, because as soon as she woke up again, her mana would be completely restored. Despite Shutra's words, Felicia's gaze was dark. Muttering, she thanked him. With rosy cheeks and looking away while twirling her hair around her finger, Felicia mumbled, "I said thank you." Sometime later, the sun began to rise behind the mountains, illuminating even part of the gorge where Chris's group was located. Bandel was the first to notice and shouted excitedly, "They're finally back! I knew the prince and princess would succeed from the start. Good job, everyone!" Bandel greeted the group that had just returned. Clearing his throat, Chris approached. He continued to clear his throat as he searched for the right words. Blushing, as it was his first time, Chris complimented, "That was an impressive job, Felicia." Felicia, however, just looked away. That was nothing. Despite Felicia's actions, Shutra felt his heart warm. Chris didn't know what else to say, so he wished Felicia a good rest, as they would be cleaning everything up. Shutra was confused to hear that there were more things to do. Chris reminded Shutra that there were still remnants of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, and that it would take about half a month to eliminate them completely. Discovering the situation, Shutra realized that they had practically won a half-month vacation. At that moment, someone approached Shutra, correcting him. "Vacation? Dream on!" Shutra blushed as he heard the whisper practically in his ear. Anxiously, Caitlin reminded Shutra that they had something to do together. The next day, as the sun shone over mountains and forests, a great impact could be heard echoing. Shutra received a strong blow to the stomach, which sent him flying. With a serious look, Caitlin warned, "Shutra, if you don't put effort into it, you'll suffer." Even with Shutra trembling, she told him to get up. The protagonist was almost in tears. He had prepared himself, but this was brutal. He hated the feral fist art training. What Caitlin had previously mentioned was nothing but the feral fist art training. In the first 5 days, Shutra felt like he did nothing but get beaten up. It was only after a week that he managed to start seeing the traces of Caitlin's punches, attacks he couldn't even keep up with before. The 11th day of training arrived faster than expected. This time, Shutra had improved tremendously and was already keeping pace with Caitlin's movements. Caitlin was excited about this. "You've started keeping up with my pace?" The protagonist smiled while, defending and counterattacking. After so many beatings, it's about time. Perhaps thanks to the daily special training, Shutra's feral fist art, as well as his aura level, both reached level 5. When night fell, Caitlin wiped the sweat from her forehead and praised, "Good. At this point, you should be ready to begin the Beast Lord's fist art." Shutra was excited to see that the training level would increase. Caitlin did not fail to reveal how impressed she was. She had never seen anyone learn so fast before. Shutra smiled excitedly. He was going to learn the secret technique of the lycanthropes, the Beast Lord's fist art. Caitlin held Shutra's hands, affirming, "From now on, I will teach you a new way to use aura." Caitlin was even more enthusiastic than Shutra. "Don't miss anything I teach and follow my steps carefully, understood?" Despite being worried, Shutra confidently nodded. The two joined hands, and a faint energy began to pass from Caitlin to Shutra. The energy expanded like a tower of power. The protagonist closed his eyes, feeling Caitlin's strong aura. The aura guided him, winding, similar to the feral fist art, but also different. Little by little, the aura became deeper and deeper. Aura was the very force of life. When pushed to the extreme, it became a type of soul power. Just like conquest, to conquer and impose obedience, a fierce and dominating power was needed. Feeling himself in an infinite ocean, Shutra let himself go, learning what aura was. The aura Caitlin used to transmit the teaching to Shutra became increasingly stronger, to the point of pushing everything around them away. With a glow in his chest, Shutra received a notification. His aura level had increased, as had the level of the feral fist art. Caitlin, observing him, complimented him. He had really managed to use the aura and the Beast Lord's fist art. The protagonist looked at his own hand, at the aura that enveloped it, as well as at Earthquake, which remained, invisible. Then Shutra clenched his fist hard. With a simple movement, the leaves around him flew due to the impact of the blow. Shutra had also evolved to level 14, which boosted his confidence. As he declared that this was where his journey began, someone with a red body watched him from behind a tree. None other than Bandel, who looked quite satisfied. The next morning, a meeting was taking place at the camp. Shutra sat at the table, eating a good breakfast with Caitlin. He wanted to go, ask his sister something about Felicia. He wanted to know why things between Felicia and Chris were strange. Caitlin was surprised by the question. Felicia would be a key ally for Shutra, as would Chris. However, if the relationship between the two was problematic, that could be an issue. Caitlin didn't know exactly how to answer, as it wasn't like an incident had occurred between them. This made Shutra even more curious, but even Caitlin wasn't sure. Perhaps it's something between Chris and Sylvan. Shutra was surprised to hear Sylvan's name mentioned. Caitlin, crossing her arms, terms, also reminded Shutra not to utter Sylvan's name lightly just because he wasn't present. After apologizing, Shutra remembered who Sylvan Doomblade was, Felicia's twin brother. He was an extremely problematic opponent when played with Zephyr. Just as he was about to ask what the problem was between Chris and Sylvan, Chris walked into the tent. "Oh, you two are here." As soon as Chris entered, the atmosphere became awkward. Shutra and Caitlin, who were talking earlier, greeted their brother in a somewhat subdued manner. Chris didn't notice anything, and excited, asked them both to pack their things. The matter was resolved faster than expected, so we will be leaving this afternoon. Curious, Shutra asked where they were going. Chris couldn't believe the question, and reminded him that they needed to report the entire mission. Outside the tent, before setting off on their journey, Bandal greeted Shutra. "You all worked hard during this mission, princes and princesses." Addressing Shutra, Bandal affirmed that he hoped they would meet again in the future. Shutra returned the greeting. "I'll be looking forward to that too, Bandal." Leading the group, Chris asked if they should leave now. They could only have one destination. "Let's go! To the Dark King's castle." A castle with gigantic towers rose amidst the shadows. The crimson sky brought a slight sense of terror to the place. In the castle's great hall, before the red carpet, there was a single throne. Wearing immense armor, the being remained in the shadows. The journey to return to the castle was quite simple. First, the group would move to the long-distance teleportation circle, and then use transfer magic to return directly to the castle. The estimated time to reach the teleportation circle was 3 days. Halfway there, they needed to set up camp for the night, as they did not stop at inns. Sitting in front of the campfire, Shutra was thinking about the king's castle. Since they would arrive at the location the next day, he was starting to get a little nervous. The protagonist used a stick to write on the ground the names of the 3 factions the castle was divided into. The second prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, the king's second son, and his worst enemy. The first prince, Baikal Ragnaros. And finally, Anastasia Nekrion, the 4th princess. In the fight for the throne, the order of birth meant nothing. The one who accumulated the most achievements and demonstrated superior abilities always came out on top. Among the 3, Baikal and Zephyr were full-blood brothers, and their abilities were extremely similar. They had inherited the blood from their mother's side, the Draconic clan, and both possessed immense power as a result. Still, if one of them were chosen as heir, the elder son Baikal, who was naturally moderate, would probably be the better choice. Shutra did not want to make a choice now, as he knew that, on a certain day, everything would change. The protagonist was preparing for that day in the best possible way. First, he intended to increase his level until he could unleash the full potential of the Earthquake Gauntlet and thus maximize the use of the new strength he had obtained. Having plenty of time, Shutra decided to check the King's Knights skill. An order of knights had been created in his name. Shutra originally thought that this skill was some kind of summoning, but it seemed to be more of a recruitment system. Reading the skill information, Shutra was surprised. There were bonuses, knight training, and even summons. The skill was extremely comprehensive. While Shutra was smiling frighteningly with happiness, Karak approached. "So you were here." The orc scolded Shutra for still being awake. "Why are you still standing instead of sleeping, Prince? If you want to leave early tomorrow, you need to rest." Karak rushed Shutra to go to bed, but the protagonist was too excited, finding the orc's appearance at that moment perfect. With an excited look, he asked, "Do you want to try a new experiment with me?" Karak felt a shiver upon hearing the question, and wanted to know what it was about. Under the bright full moon, Shutra decided to test the new skill. He drew a sword and placed it on the shoulder of Karak, who was kneeling. "Mighty orc warrior, I name you as my knight." A glow descended upon Karak, activating the skill. The orc felt something different in his body. Somehow he realized that his loyalty level to Shutra had increased. Now, becoming the commander of the knights, Karak, at level 24, was marked as a first-rank soldier. The protagonist was extremely excited about the result. He placed his hand on Karak's shoulder, who was still stunned by the strength he felt flowing through his body, and stated, "Karak, don't you want to become the strongest orc in the world?" Shutra's eyes shone with anticipation. Looking to the future, the protagonist could already see. "Just wait. I will make you the most powerful orc emperor in Night Saga, someone who can even play with dragons." Seeing how much Shutra was dreaming, Karak worriedly asked if he was feeling all right. In the middle of the forest, the next day, the group found a stone tower. Inside the tower was a teleportation center where a magic circle remained active. Chris took control of the situation, asking if they should leave now. The protagonist nodded, excited by the prospect. Shutra stepped onto the magic circle, which glowed as everyone positioned themselves. He felt his body being taken over by a different energy. A tower of light shot up into the sky, like an inverted lightning bolt, taking the group through space. Shutra felt his body moving at a speed he couldn't control. When he could see what was happening again, he had already reached his destination. Falling to his knees, he tried to understand where he was. Caitlin approached Shutra with concern, asking if he was okay. Despite being startled, the protagonist nodded. As soon as they arrived from the journey, someone recognized Felicia and excitedly called out to her. Several other elves surrounded Felicia with enthusiasm. Surrounded by so many elves, Felicia smiled happily, talking to them all. Shutra was surprised. That looked like some kind of idol fan club. Are these Felicia's subordinates? On the other side, several beastmen and werewolves greeted Chris and Caitlin. The protagonist smiled, seeing that no one there would welcome him. On the other hand, some elves were talking to Felicia, whispering while looking at Shutra. They laughed, whatever they were commenting on. Shutra soon understood what was happening and where he was inside the castle. The protagonist sighed as this was not far from his expectations. Shutra turned to Karak and declared animatedly, "From here we're going to start things step by step this time." The Dark King's castle was extremely frequented, yet some areas looked abandoned, full of cobwebs as well as forgotten boxes. This was the place where Shutra would be staying. Barak had just finished unpacking the items from the trip. The orc remembered to tell Shutra that the official events would begin the next day, and until then, they were free to do as they pleased. Despite being called free time, Shutra didn't think it was any different from being left to rot in a forgotten place. While frustration hit him, Shutra heard someone knock on the door of the room he was in. A woman with chin-length hair entered the room, greeting him. "It is an honor to meet you, sir." She also introduced herself, Flora Sevensward from the Dark King's Castle Real Estate Administration Office. "Curious," Shutra asked in a monotonous voice. "What brings someone of such an important position to come to such a dilapidated place as this?" Flora was direct, revealing that Shutra's public merits had increased, and he was now eligible to choose a new residence. Shutra was surprised, as this was exciting news. Sometime later, Shutra met Isabella, a woman with her hair in a bun and a pair of glasses, an employee of the Public Merit Office. Upon arriving at the location, Shutra asked if he could really choose a new place to stay. Isabella nodded and, with a wave of her hand, opened various information displays. She revealed that due to his latest achievements, Shutra had reached level 5 in merits, with 15,000 points accumulated. Thanks to this, he could now access more facilities within the king's castle, in addition to receiving a higher monthly salary, from 5 to 500 gold coins. Isabella congratulated Shutra, as he was the first prince to achieve so many merits in his first mission. Not interested in these formalities, Shutra asked her to directly show the available residences. As soon as Barak arrived at the residence Shutra chose, his jaw dropped. Standing before a grand mansion, he couldn't believe it. "Is this really your new residence?" A woman was already waiting for Shutra, although he had arrived earlier than she expected. Flora Sevensward this time was there specifically to start serving as butler and headmaid. Barak was confused and whispered to Shutra, "Didn't she say earlier that she was from the real estate agency or something?" Shutra revealed to the orc that he had hired Flora using merit points. Merit was like a currency earned for achievements, although Barak didn't need to understand the details. The next day, at the Dark King's castle, the first appointments were about to happen. Wearing a suit, Barak was a little uncomfortable. He kept feeling the urge to go to the bathroom and worried that he was too anxious. Shutra, in a white suit, just told him to hurry up, as he was also getting nervous. As soon as he entered the room, a young woman complimented the duo. "Wow, you two look amazing." Shutra was surprised to see Caitlin in a large ball gown, accompanied by Felicia in a small white dress, who answered on Shutra's behalf. "Who do you think chose their outfits?" Felicia observed her brother, letting out a compliment. "Well, I guess all the effort was worth it." Caitlin also complimented him, and he, blushing, returned the compliment to the two girls. The unexpected compliment made them smile, and as usual, Felicia looked away. "Humph, of course we are." Chris, wearing a leather jacket, joined them, commenting curiously, "This is your first ceremony, isn't it, Shutra?" He clenched his fist firmly in support of the prince. "Today you are the star. Show the whole castle who you are." Excited about this, the protagonist nodded. Soon the doors of the hall were opened to the princes. There were some who might think Shutra's achievements were simply luck, but soon everyone would see him with their own eyes. Shutra was going to show them again the prince they once repudiated. With a crowd on both sides of the hall, the 4 princes approached the stairs leading to the throne and knelt before the king. Chris, the 7th prince, was the first to present himself. They were standing before the great governor of the Dark Realm, King Mitra. A butler next to the king spoke on his behalf, asking them to begin the report of the prince's and princess's achievements. The protagonist felt the pressure of personally meeting King Mitra, the father of all the king's children. He had forgotten that this was a being that should never be underestimated inside the castle. In front of Shutra, Mitra was like a giant. His oppressive aura made the young man look like an ant. The pressure Shutra felt was something he never imagined could exist. A gaze was focused on him, and standing before Mitra made his body tremble, to the point of seeming about to break. It was at that moment that, deep within Shutra, a woman murmured with an outstretched hand, "Conquer, for you are also a king." Shutra felt a blessing in his chest. In front of Mitra, the woman's voice resonated inside him. "Overcome even this gaze, this suffocating pressure, and subjugate it to your will." The energy strengthened Shutra's whole body, who gritted his teeth and, with an inner glow, raised his head, confronting Mitra's gaze. In Shutra's eyes, the power to conquer arose. Throughout the entire meeting, Mitra kept his eyes fixed on Shutra with an equally golden gaze. He spoke for the first time, calling directly for Shutra, something that shocked everyone else. From Felicia to Caitlin and Chris, everyone looked at Shutra stunned. Curious, the protagonist kept his gaze on Mitra, who declared a single sentence, simple but full of meaning. "I look forward to seeing your future conquests." Around the hall, many people were also speechless. From living beings to undead, they asked each other what was happening, as the king had never called any of the princes or princesses by name during an audience before. Everyone wondered why the king would mention the 9th prince, who had never been present before. That was an apparently ordinary declaration addressed to Shutra, but it was also something no one had ever heard from the king, and that made it invaluable. Shutra delivered a fitting response. "I will do everything in my power to live up to your majesty's expectations." Thus, Shutra Ignas concluded his first audience, leaving a powerful impression on everyone who saw him. The next day, Barak's shouts were hastily trying to wake him up. The protagonist woke up reluctantly, asking what had happened. Barak showed him a letter they had received from the public merit office. Confused, the protagonist opened the letter and was surprised by what he read. Curious, Barak asked Shutra to read it aloud. As he read, Shutra was unsure how he should feel. The protagonist revealed that King Mitra, his own father, had given him a mission. Sometime later, in another part of the castle, Chris observed the same letter, telling Caitlin that Shutra was going on a mission to subjugate a Cassius herd, a monster extermination operation. Upon hearing about the mission, Caitlin realized that her brother would be going to the Anger Plains. Curious, Shutra asked if that wasn't the place where the centaurs lived. Caitlin confirmed, revealing that she and Chris had trained in the Anger Plains before. Chris said that the subjugation had become an almost annual event. Despite wanting to go with Shutra, Chris revealed that he already had something scheduled for the same date. On the other hand, Caitlin was excited and confident that Shutra could handle it alone. Still, the siblings warned him, "From now on, people will start paying attention to you. Some will try to get closer, while others will be on alert. You will need to be careful of those around you." Shutra already expected this to happen. Even Zephyr himself had commented that he had never been called by name in an audience. Chris volunteered to help, asking Shutra to call him if he needed anything. Before he left, Chris also asked him to visit Felicia, as his sister had something to deliver. Shutra then went to another region of the castle. The moon on the horizon was still full, but hidden by the crimson mist. The protagonist was ready to travel and had gone to the teleportation hall with Barak. There, he found Felicia in front of 2 giant lizards. "If you're going to travel through centaur territory, you'll need good pairs of legs." Felicia was handing over the 2 giant mounts to Shutra and Barak. Approaching the young man, Felicia extended her closed hand to give him something else too. The protagonist was surprised to see the Dark Elf's Tears amulet. Shutra couldn't believe she was giving him one of the sacred treasures of the Dark Elves, something that would normally only be obtained by defeating Felicia herself. After handing over the item, Felicia explained, "Dark Elves are a proud race. They never forget the kindness they receive, nor the vengeance they need to execute." Felicia then hugged Shutra tightly and asked, "Take care of yourself and return safely." The protagonist was surprised, even scared. He never thought Felicia would act like this. Before he could reply, Felicia lightly pushed him away and looked off to the side. It was nothing. She herself had realized how strange the gesture was. With Barak and the mounts beside him, Shutra stepped onto the teleportation platform and waved goodbye. "I'm leaving. Stay healthy until we see each other again." Thus, Felicia watched Shutra disappear into the teleport and nodded to his request. On the Anger Plains, a bolt of light struck a tower, ending the teleportation. Shutra, Barak, and the 2 lizards had just arrived. Still confused, Barak asked, "Did we arrive?" Shutra, who was also experiencing this for only the second time, agreed. Someone who was already on the plains greeted Shutra upon seeing him arrive. With goat feet and ears, fur-covered legs, and small horns, the short-haired woman with a long tail introduced herself. "I am Karma, the ranger designated to guide you. The protagonist greeted her, introducing himself, although she already knew who he was. Shutra observed Karma's body, the human upper half and the beast lower half. She was a satyr. With everything ready, Karma began to guide them. Running nimbly, driven by her fast legs, she led them through the desert. As Shutra and Barak followed her, she explained, "It will take 2 days until we reach the centaur settlement. I plan to travel with as few breaks as possible. Is that all right?" The protagonist, agreed, and then Karma, curious, approached him. "Are there no other soldiers?" Revealing that the mission had been assigned suddenly, Shutra explained that, for now, only the 2 of them were traveling. Since they knew they would receive reinforcements later, Karma showed no concern and revealed that the battle would basically be a group fight. Thinking about the situation, Shutra understood that weapons would be the problem. As it would probably be a mounted battle, he concluded that it would be best to get a spear. Suddenly, the trio stopped advancing upon hearing a noise coming from the rear. When Shutra asked what the sound was, Karma asked him to wait while she checked. She quickly darted off, running through the desert. Upon reaching a higher point, where she had a better view, Karma was surprised by what she saw. Several wolves, a horde of Cassius, were chasing a centaur. The beasts had bright eyes and menacing teeth. Little by little, they were approaching the centaur, who was fleeing alone, one of the eye. Wolves managed to catch up and jumped to bite him. The young centaur screamed in fear. In the last instant, Shutra appeared mounted on the lizard and made the creature headbutt the wolf far away. The animal collided with a rock, destroying it and scattering debris in all directions. The lizard turned around, and Shutra positioned it in front of the centaur to protect him. Shutra and his mount faced the Cassius wolves, accepting the welcome that arrived earlier. On Shutra's fist, a gauntlet with a dragon's face shone, revealing itself. Shutra was consumed by an ardent desire to fight. Protecting the centaur, Shutra provoked, "Come at me, mutts!" Shocked, the centaur asked Shutra who he was, if he was the prince. A larger wolf took a step forward and snarled furiously. It was fearless and charged at Shutra. The protagonist realized that this was the chief of the wolf pack. While Shutra prepared to face the large wolf, Karma and Barak tried to get closer to free him from danger. Showing that he was fine, Shutra made them watch his performance. The protagonist climbed onto the eye, saddle, and standing up, was aided by the lizard to jump toward the wolf. The dragon's gauntlet shone gold with the preparation of the blow, the beast lord's fist art, which Shutra had practiced for a long time. Gauntlet and wolf prepared for the confrontation. The wolf opened its large mouth, showing sharp teeth. With the strength gathered in the gauntlet, Shutra gritted his teeth, preparing his strongest attack. The explosion fist skill was unleashed, breaking the air in front of Shutra with flames created by the friction with the air and the wolf's body. Barak and the satyr were shocked. With a single blow, Shutra destroyed the wolf leader all at once. The beast's body fell before the protagonist. All the other wolves, seeing their leader defeated, were scared. Grunting, they fled far away. Looking at the gauntlet, Shutra wondered if it had just amplified the aura he used. The blow was much more destructive than he imagined it would be. The attack was extremely satisfying, as Shutra could see that he was at least on Caitlin's level. Clapping her hands, Karma praised Shutra, who incredibly managed to defeat a Cassius in one attack. The centaur, saved by Shutra, thanked him immensely. The centaur, named Quick Wind, revealed himself to be an escort sent to guide Shutra. From then on, he would take them to the centaur settlement on the Anger Plains. As they continued their journey, they did not notice, however, that the wolf Shutra had defeated glowed with an energy that left its body. Upon arriving at the centaur settlement, they found countless circular tents of incredible different sizes. From the top of a hill, they had an incredible view of the place. There were 4 centaur tribes on the plains: strong wind, heavy rain, and stormy night, located in a triangular region, and in the middle, furious flame. Among them, the furious flame tribe was the most powerful. Its chief also served as the high chief, uniting the other tribes. Shutra was soon greeted by someone, Wild Eyes, the high chief of the centaurs. Any Night Saga player who played the Dark Realm chapter would recognize this name, as he was in an inevitable encounter. Wild Eyes, however, was not an ally, but an enemy. Barak approached Shutra, whispering, "As his name says, he has a sinister look." Shutra reminded Barak that he was the 9th prince. The look of slight contempt from Wild Eyes was not ignored. Shutra faced him. "I would like to hear your assessment of the current situation." Shutra followed Wild Eyes to a tent, where the centaur showed him a map. Wild Eyes stated that the situation was not good. The Cassius horde, which should be in the north, had arrived much earlier this year. He revealed that scouts were now observing the area, although some judged that part of the horde had simply gotten lost. Wild Eyes concluded his speech by revealing that, in 3 days, the warriors of the 4 tribes would finish gathering, and thus, united, they could crush any beast in their path. Shutra observed the character who, in the game, was impossible to ally with, and imagined that this time it would be different. After agreeing with what Wild Eyes revealed, Shutra asked if there was anything else. The centaur ended up asking out of curiosity, "Ninth Prince, is it true that you crushed a Cassius with a single punch?" The protagonist smiled upon hearing the question, revealing that the information was correct. He held out his fist, confident, "If you want, I can show you how I did it later." Shutra intended to make Wild Eyes an ally, just as he did with Caitlin and Chris. The centaur chief merely nodded slightly, stating that he was looking forward to seeing. Night soon fell, and as some centaurs trotted through the settlement, they noticed the presence of Shutra, the Ninth Prince. The rumor about Shutra crushing a Cassius had already spread, and everyone wanted to take a look at the young man. Barak, accompanying Shutra, ended up commenting, "Just like the incident with General Bandal, you've become quite popular." The protagonist was very confident in boasting, "Of course, it's all thanks to my natural charm." Regretting his comment, Barak instructed Shutra to go and rest. The protagonist occupied a tent with an open roof. As he slept to the point of drooling, a light appeared, so intense that it woke him up. Shutra was shocked to realize that the intense light was coming from the earthquake gauntlet. Getting up, he wondered when the gauntlet was equipped on his arm. The voice of a woman surrounded by light entered the protagonist's ears, calling him Ninth Prince, Shutra Ignas. The protagonist ended up looking at the woman, enveloped in spiritual energy, with plant tattoos on her legs, who floated towards him, asking for help. Still speechless, Shutra asked the woman who she was. She ended up introducing herself while her green hair still fluttered. "I am the fragment of the observer ankle, the green wind." Shutra was speechless when he heard the name Green Wind. This was one of the natural spirits revered by the centaurs and satyrs. In the world history of Night Saga, the reason the Anger Plains remained green and prosperous was the power of the green wind. Before the protagonist could realize it, he found himself on the plains, where green grass stretched to the horizon, and the only presence beside him was the green wind spirit. In the distance, a temple was visible, which Green Wind introduced as her home. This was where the fragment of her creator, the observer ankle, resided. Green flames and lights could be seen on the temple, from the exterior to the interior. Shutra observed the temple and what Green Wind revealed, and he paused for a moment. He remembered that the observer ankle was one of the 6 ancient dragons, and he gasped at the information. Ancient dragons were divine beings that players could never encounter in Night Saga. Shutra had only recently received the Earthquake Gauntlet from Enkidu, and now he was having an encounter with the Observer Ankle. The protagonist did not believe this was just a coincidence. Green Wind was urgent. "Prince, we don't have time. The monsters from the north are approaching my home. Their goal is to steal the vegetation of the Anger Plains. They will destroy my home and devour my spirit." To Green Wind, only Shutra could protect that place, which left the young man quite confused as to why, since his level wasn't even high yet. Green Wind reminded Shutra, "You already possess the power of Enkidu, don't you?" Stretching out her hand to Shutra and releasing the power of nature, she reassured him. "Don't worry, Ankle's fragment will grant you a much stronger power. First, show this token to my offspring." Shutra woke up from the vision he had, returning to the tent as Green Wind disappeared. Looking at his own hand, Shutra observed a mysterious power. The energy was exhaled from a small piece of wood. When Shutra went to another tent and told what had happened, Wild Eyes was shocked. Green Wind is in danger? The protagonist revealed more. There is a small temple to the north. If what Green Wind said is true, the Cassius will attack it soon. There is no time. We must gather the troops and move immediately. Clearing his throat, Wild Eyes refused to march based on a single story. To convince him, Shutra showed the piece of wood with the forest energy. That was the divine relic of the Green Wind. With a serious look, Wild Eyes believed Shutra and asked the young man what he should do. The next day, as the sun rose, several centaurs began to march. They carried spears and bows ready for battle. Amidst the centaurs, Shutra rode his lizard. Using a map, the protagonist quickly managed to find the small temple. The temple of the Green Wind was surrounded by a mysterious energy, the same one Shutra had seen in his vision. The temple was so deep in the forest that, if not for the system map, it could not be found. As they approached, a centaur drew the chief's attention, not to the temple, but to something else. On the horizon, a horde of monsters had appeared. The Cassius managed to find where the Temple of the Green Wind was much faster than Shutra expected. Shutra could see that something was definitely going on, but he wasn't yet aware of what it was. Seeing that the monsters were in a greater quantity than expected, Wild Eyes asked Shutra if he had a plan. The protagonist remembered that Green Wind had told him to obtain the power of Ankle's fragment. Therefore, that item must be inside the temple. Thus, Shutra announced that he would go ahead and ask the Centaur chief to keep the enemy away. Moving forward, Shutra called Karak and Karma to accompany him. On the other side, Wild Eyes raised his sword and shouted, "Do not let any of them approach the temple." With great courage, he commanded, "Prepare for battle!" Under the command of Wild Eyes, the centaurs and satyrs advanced bravely. A squad of archers had positioned themselves and drawn their bows for the attack. A rain of arrows fell upon the Cassius wolves. The squad, armed with swords and spears, charged with a thirsty look. They brandished their weapons, finishing off the wolves wherever they passed. Shutra and his group managed to use the confusion to bypass the situation and head towards the temple. Midway, Karak drew an axe, knowing that the prince only needed to reach the temple. Karak moved in front of Shutra to attack and clear his path. The great warrior orc spun his body, preparing to attack the wolves in the way. Karak's attacks proved powerful, and with every swing of the axe, a wolf was struck down. Karma did not stand still, and drawing a small dagger, she also cleared the path, defeating some Cassius. The protagonist praised the duo's work, and while they defeated the wolves, continued to advance with their help. When Shutra was approaching the temple, however, he saw a large club coming toward him. The protagonist managed to dodge by jumping with the lizard. A large ogre had appeared, and due to the attack, Shutra lost his balance, falling with his mount. The ogre roared furiously and ran towards the protagonist with heavy steps. The protagonist blamed himself for letting his guard down. However, before he was hit, Karak stepped into his path, blocking the ogre's second attack. Karak, even with some wounds from the combat, protected Shutra and asked if he was all right. With a calm look, Karak asked, "Get up, Your Highness. This is no time to rest." Yet, the ogre roared furiously, not allowing Karak to be distracted. The ogre brandished its club once more, forcing Karak to protect himself with a cleaver. Karak gritted his teeth to withstand all the continuous attacks. Shutra ended up scoffing at Karak. "What's this? You were acting so proudly. Don't tell me you can't handle it anymore." The protagonist drew a dagger and plunged it into the ground, causing energy to rush toward Karak with the activation of the King's Banner skill. With Karak strengthened, Shutra shouted, "From now on, let's focus on attacking." Karak obeyed Shutra and brandished the cleaver to attack the ogre, hitting it with great power. The ogre couldn't understand what happened. It only felt terrible pain. However, thanks to its size, the monster resisted the attack. Karak continued the attack, using the power of the buff provided by Shutra, and hit the ogre once more. This time, the blow was deep and caused the orc's enemy to drown in its own suffering. Karak raised the cleaver for a final, devastating attack. When the blow came down, he showed all his strength, sinking the monster into the ground and destroying everything around it. A large curtain of dust spread throughout the region. As soon as they defeated the main enemy, Karak cleared the way for Shutra, who ran toward the temple while thanking the warrior orc. The protagonist quickly approached. As soon as he entered the temple, he discovered that the place was dark. However, a voice pleaded in Shutra's ear. "Hurry up!" That was the voice of Green Wind. Enkidu's gauntlet glowed, and Green Wind's voice stated, "The artifact will guide you." From the gauntlet, the energy created a light that pointed into the interior of the temple. Shutra followed that energy until he found a tree, large and imposing. The tree surpassed the temple's ceiling. Its branches were strong and grew into the immensity. Leaving Shutra surprised by the energy, a branch extended towards him like a hand, carrying an item full of power. Shutra looked at that item with surprise. It was a dragon heart, the source of mana that all dragons possessed. That was the heart of a dragon. Einkel's fragment was that item. While Shutra was still trying to understand the situation, Green Wind appeared before him once more. The Enger Plains have maintained peace for a long time thanks to the magic of the observer Einkel. The fairy explained that the temple, as the center of the magic, had been born from Einkel's fragment. If that place were destroyed, peace would crumble. With so much information, Green Wind made a request that left Shutra curious. Awaken the old magic of Einkel remaining in the temple and prevent destruction from happening. Outside the temple, Wild Eyes was shouting, "Do not retreat! You cannot let them enter the temple!" Karak raised his axe, jumping against the monsters. Karma used all her energy to attack the beasts with agility. Inside the temple, Green Wind pointed to the dragon heart and pleaded, "Please, Ninth Prince, protect the Anger Plains and my child with the magic she left behind." Facing the dragon heart, Shutra reached out to touch it. Immediately, the scenery before the protagonist changed. The tree disappeared, and as soon as he looked up, he found himself facing a gigantic dragon with 3 green eyes, deer antlers, and a long greenish mane. Shutra recognized that dragon, the observer, Ainkel. The dragon's eyes shone with an intense green, transmitting energy to Shutra, along with a voice that reached his ears. "Receive this." A glow resonated at the top of the temple. Like a pillar, the energy rose to the infinite sky, stealing the world's brilliance for itself and drawing everyone's attention to the point of momentarily interrupting the war. Speechless, Karak knew that this was caused by the prince. Suddenly, countless roots began to sprout from the ground, growing until they became as large as the temple. The roots transformed into trees, and these possessed life. Faced with the walking trees, wolves and ogres were afraid. The temple's protectors advanced with righteousness, creating chaos among the invaders. With ferocity, the trees attacked with their branches and roots, hitting the monsters before they could flee. Quickly, control of the battle was obtained, and the war ended. Observing all of that happen, Greenwind commented, relieved. "It's over. Ankel's ancient magic has awakened." Extremely excited, Greenwind approached Shutra, thanking him intensely. "Thanks to you, the Anger Plains will live." However, Shutra didn't seem to be able to hear. Still touching the dragon heart, he seemed to have been dominated by the item. Greenwind couldn't understand what was happening, as all of Ankel's mana was flowing into him. Greenwind gasped when she saw the human attempt to absorb Ankel's power. However, it was visible in Shutra's empty eyes that he was not in control of the situation. Several wounds already appeared on Shutra's face, as if sharp blades of wind were hitting him. Greenwind became extremely worried that he would continue with it, as his body wouldn't be able to handle it. In the middle of the absorption, a golden glow surrounded Shutra. He had leveled up. The wounds on the protagonist's face began to heal at a visible speed, which greatly surprised Greenwind. Shutra continued to level up, once and then again. He heard the voice of a person with a mysterious aura in his mind. "Conquer, subdue, and make them kneel in obedience. Even if this is a fragment of an ancient dragon, make it kneel before you." Shutra closed his hand around the dragon heart, following the voice of that woman with blue and red eyes, who granted him even greater power. Shutra's heart beat in a different way, with a green color. A glow as intense as the sun emanated before the temple's great tree, coming from Shutra's body until it dispersed, bringing tranquility to the place once more. Shutra had finished the absorption and distanced himself from the tree. Inside the protagonist, the energy still shone. With such energy visible even in his eyes, he repeated the words that the mysterious woman internally whispered, "You are the Knight of Conquest." A new passive skill was obtained by Shutra, Draconic Body. Along with this, an already acquired skill, Protagonist Physique, rose to level 2. Now he was immune to all poisons. Shutra looked at his information with surprise. He had obtained a new subclass, Draconic, a being who awakened the dragon gene and could use dragon magic. That was a Draconic. Despite being an Asura-Draconian hybrid, Zephyr's recessive heritage allowed him to awaken the dragon gene. Greenwind was impressed to see that Shutra had truly obtained both the spirit and body of a dragon. She could feel the power of the observer Ankel within him. However, Greenwind was not disappointed. That was a power that no one had been able to use, sealed for over a millennium. Treating Shutra as the successor of the observer Ankel, Greenwind revealed having only one wish. "Can you protect the Anger Plains and my children?" The protagonist smiled confidently. "Of course I can." Outside the temple, the wandering trees continued to deal with the Cassius. They possessed great fury, but the monsters began to resist. The Trent's bodies were literally made of wood, which made it easy for the invaders to destroy them. A gigantic dark being appeared, carrying an axe while roaring, showing the fury of its red eyes and its pairs of horns. From the top of the temple, Shutra observed what appeared to be an orc centaur and classified it as the commander of the Cassius. Leaping from the top of the temple, Shutra quickly approached Karak, intending to ask him something. The giant monster continued to brandish its axe, knocking down the Trents like rotten trees. It roared fiercely as it continued its attacks, until it noticed, out of the corner of its eye, someone approaching. Shutra hit the large ogre centaur with the gauntlet, destabilizing it. However, the enraged beast promptly brandished its axe, trying to hit the ant-sized human. The protagonist managed to dodge, even with the enemy being extremely agile despite its size. The beast continued to pursue Shutra while he hastily retreated. Channeling his energy into Enkidu's gauntlet, Shutra prepared the next attack. The protagonist used the explosion fist, hitting the beast squarely. However, the impact not only caused little damage to the creature, but also made Shutra's entire body tremble. While Shutra was still complaining irritably about the hardness of the beast's body, it heavily attacked him with the axe. Fortunately, the protagonist was agile in his dodge, jumping backward. Shutra retreated in time, but now knew how resilient the enemy was. Faced with this situation, the protagonist released an energy he hadn't used yet. Dragon blood began to run in his veins, releasing a transcendental aura. The draconic exclusive ability was activated, strengthening Earthquake to unleash part of its true power. The protagonist gathered all the power he possessed, preparing a single attack. The beast wouldn't let him prepare freely and charged in an attempt to stop him. Mid-preparation, Shutra summoned Karak. Summon King's Knight, Karak appeared from behind the beast, charging with fury while carrying the axe above his head. Karak hit the creature unprepared, delivering a powerful blow that unbalanced it. The beast's attention was drawn to Karak. An opportunity was created for Shutra. The protagonist had finished charging the attack and jumped against the enemy monster. The creature could see the glow of Shutra's attack out of the corner of its eyes and tried to move hastily. Shutra clenched his fist with force and conviction. This time it will be completely different from before. With the authority of a dragon, Shutra's fist advanced. The secret art of earthquakes was activated, and, like a comet capable of shaking an entire world, Shutra pierced the monster leader with a devastating blow, like the gigantic impact of a piston. As soon as he turned the monster into a donut, Shutra knocked it down, bringing an end to the battle in front of the entire centaur army. The centaur leader abandoned his wild eyes look to stare, speechless, at the situation with an incredulous gaze. Barak was satisfied to see his prince become so powerful. Like a mountain sliding, the great monster fell, without much else to do. With his fist clenched, Shutra received the experience points from the victory, leveling up. Shutra had defeated the dragon ogre chief Mustafa. Thanks to this feat, he obtained the title of Draconic Ogre Hunter. The ogre on the ground released an extremely vicious energy, while its body decayed at a visible speed. Looking at the gauntlet, Shutra wondered, relieved, how much aura energy he had used. If he hadn't leveled up at the final moment of the battle, he might have fainted from exhaustion. To use such an ability with a special weapon, Shutra would need a specific movement control technique, but he didn't have such a thing yet. In other words, the giant piston skill he had used was not even the ultimate move of the Earthquake Gauntlet. There were still much more incredible techniques stored within. Barak hastily ran to Shutra, warning him that some enemies were fleeing, as their leader had been defeated. Wild Eyes did not stand still and charged, brandishing his sword to attack the remaining Cassius. He raised his sword, ordering his herd, "Pursue the invaders! We cannot let them escape so they can return to attack us." Leading the entire settlement, Wild Eyes initiated the hunt so that no enemy escaped alive. The chase lasted until the end of the night, when bonfires were made in front of the temple where the centaurs celebrated. A festival was taking place. The centaurs celebrated enthusiastically while drinking and eating. Barak and Karma had joined the celebration and were toasting together. At the same time, inside the temple where the great mother tree stood, Green Wind reunited with Shutra once more. "You should be enjoying yourself, so what are you doing here?" The protagonist revealed he had some doubts he would like her to clarify. Green Wind agreed to answer whatever he wanted, but first she asked if he would free her from his control. The protagonist was confused, and Green Wind came to explain, "Because you absorbed Einkel's mana, I, who was born from his magic, am now linked to you." The protagonist realized what she meant and asked for just a moment to free her. The duo fell silent, as if waiting for something to happen. Nothing seemed to change, so they looked at each other. Confused, Shutra put his hand on his chin. "Well, how do I do that?" Green Wind was surprised by his question. "Oh, temporary eternal master, you really don't know how to do it?" The protagonist replied affirmatively, revealing he had never learned how to do such a thing, which left Green Wind quite frustrated, as he had really just acted as if he knew. While Green Wind showed an irritated expression, Shutra tried to think for a moment until he asked, "Okay, what is your current situation?" Green Wind pointed to Shutra, answering firmly, "I am yours, that is, I obey you. The protagonist tried to correct what he had asked, questioning if she felt uncomfortable in any way, or if she had felt any change. However, she denied feeling any alteration in her abilities or condition. Greenwind revealed, however, that if she disappeared, the plains would lose their vitality, as she was the living symbol of the magic of life that Einkel conjured over the plains. The protagonist thought for a bit and shocked Greenwind with a question. So couldn't you just stay on the plains instead of coming with me? He believed there was no real reason for her to continue following him. Greenwind interpreted Shutra's words. Are you saying you are abandoning me? Head down, the fairy looked sadly at the ground. The protagonist quickly corrected himself and asked upon noticing, Wait, you want to come with me, Greenwind? Irritated, Greenwind argued with him. You are my master, aren't you? It's natural that I accompany you. Although confused, Shutra felt as if he had accidentally formed a spiritual contract. Shutra remembered that Greenwind had said she was the symbol of the spell cast over the plains and asked if she could, by chance, create something that could take her place. Greenwind was shocked by the question. Although it would take some time, she thought it would be possible. Thus, under the great tree, Shutra asked Greenwind to create a substitute so that she could leave the plains with him. Greenwind, however, warned that she wouldn't be of much help to him, as she would have to leave most of her powers on the Enger plains. However, Shutra didn't treat that as a major problem. For him, forming a contract with a high-ranking nature spirit was already a great opportunity he was going to seize. Seeing how Shutra wasn't stingy at all, Greenwind felt touched by his kindness. Now that they had settled things, Shutra wanted to move on to his questions. He was direct, asking when and how Einkel had perished. Greenwind was surprised by the question. As she was only a fragment and a spirit born from a piece of nature, she did not possess many of Einkel's memories. However, she remembered that Einkel was attacked 1,000 years ago. Shutra was surprised by the revelation. Greenwind did not know who had attacked Einkel, but she was sure it hadn't been another dragon. Confused, Shutra wondered who could eliminate an ancient dragon, beings that should possess power to rival the heavens. Seeing how Shutra was always formal with her, Greenwind asked him to speak more casually so that she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. The protagonist agreed to the request and changed the subject. Becoming Einkel's successor, Shutra asked the nature spirit if he could also obtain the power of other dragons. Greenwind thought for a bit and revealed that, although it was generally impossible, it seemed to be different for him. She recalled how Shutra already possessed two opposing powers, the power of the great Enkidu and the power of Einkel. If he was capable of balancing such forces that opposed each other, then he could also handle the power of other dragons. The protagonist was surprised by Greenwind's revelation and understood what it meant to be a true protagonist. Shutra had one last question. Do you know anything about the power I possess? Greenwind reminded Shutra that she did not possess many memories, so the knowledge she had about his power was incomplete. Suddenly, Greenwind shone mysteriously, to the point of dazzling Shutra's sight. The protagonist wondered what was happening so suddenly. Greenwind's eyes changed color, while a mysterious power took over her body. A deep voice reverberated, O knight of conquest, born under the destiny of kings. The observer Einkel herself seemed to be speaking directly to Shutra. You must conquer and govern all creatures. That is the power of the king, something that must be yours. Sunrise quickly arrived at the small temple. Shutra had slept on the cold ground inside the temple. He was only awakened when the sun's rays shone on his face. As he wondered what had happened, he remembered talking to Greenwind the night before. Greenwind immediately appeared upon seeing Shutra regain consciousness. The spirit wasn't sure, but revealed that, apparently, the spirit of Einkel remaining inside her had awakened the night before, and this must have been the cause of his unconsciousness facing Einkel's power. The protagonist remembered the encounter he had the night before, from the change in Greenwind to the sensation of speaking with the nature dragon. Shutra found out about the power of the king and the power of the knight of conquest, as well as Einkel already knowing about his powers. Stating that Shutra was now her master for all eternity, Greenwind extended her hand, revealing that she would tell him something she hadn't mentioned the night before. With Greenwind's power, countless holograms appeared before the protagonist. There, basically, a map of all the plains appeared. Greenwind revealed that, in the far north of the plains, there was a relic of the observer Einkel. Like Earthquake, which Shutra already possessed, that was an artifact imbued with the power of an ancient dragon, the Shield of Life. Green Wind told a story to Shutra. More than 1,000 years ago, the observer Ankle gave the Shield of Life to the bravest and most righteous centaur warrior. The warrior led his people against the enemies from the north and won countless victories without suffering a single wound. However, the brave warrior was not 100% invincible. He hadn't taken the shield to bed with him, and one night, while sharing a bed with a woman sent by someone who coveted the shield, he was betrayed. The Shield of Life had been given to the courageous warrior by Ankle himself, so no one but him could hold it. The warrior's followers, then, buried the Shield of Life along with its wielder in the northern tomb. The centaur had become a legend, as had the existence of the Shield of Life. After that moment, the centaurs gave a name to the shield: White Suri. The protagonist was surprised to hear the item's name. That was an item that only appeared as a background in the Night Saga story. It wasn't a possibly obtainable item. Even veteran players like him never found the shield, which turned out to be a dragon's artifact. While Green Wind was surprised to find out that her master knew about the White Suri, the protagonist asked, "So, where is the location of the tomb?" He was extremely excited to obtain the legendary item. Rolling her eyes, Green Wind revealed that they needed to go to the far north to find it. But before they left, Green Wind still needed to create her substitute. As soon as she finished, they could leave immediately. Anxious, Shutra asked how long she would take. Green Wind replied that, thanks to the help she received, it would take about 2 days. The protagonist was excited by the idea that they could leave in 2 days. He was eager to obtain the shield above all else, as things would become much easier if he possessed. Time passed quickly. The centaurs carried supplies and boxes back and forth. Shutra thought he could use the pretext of hunting the remaining caches to head north. The problem was that the protection spell activated by the temple must have already been detected by the Dark King's castle, which meant that an expert would be sent soon to inspect the ruins. If the report was delivered that same day, the expert should arrive within a week. Shutra planned to leave before anyone arrived. It was at that moment that Wild Eyes arrived to reveal, "Prince, someone from the king's castle has just arrived." The protagonist was surprised by the news. Inside the temple, the protagonist received the visitor. He was shocked when he recognized the person sent by the castle. With her arms crossed, Felicia questioned, "What is that expression? You look like you've seen a ghost." Speechless, Shutra asked why Felicia was there. Seeing how he was talking nonsense, Felicia wanted to exchange a few greetings first. A young woman with green skin ended up approaching and drew attention. She held her dress and bowed slightly. "It is an honor to meet the 9th prince. I am Daphne, the daughter of the Echo and 5th concubine." The protagonist was surprised to recognize Daphne, the dryad druid. Daphne was part of the 3 half-siblings who had to be protected at all costs. Along with Daphne, Felicia revealed that she was an exceptional druid. She will be of great help to this mission, as the Plain Spirit Guardian is involved. Shutra never expected to meet Daphne in that situation, but he wanted to make a good first impression. Changing the subject, Shutra addressed Felicia. "Shouldn't you be going to the Gishka Mountains to study the anvil that gives rise to thunder?" Felicia revealed she was really planning to go there, but Shutra had finished his own mission too quickly, so she changed her plans. Felicia warned her brother, "Shutra, you are attracting too much attention." Being honest, Felicia stated that the subjugation of the caches was not difficult, but finishing the mission in only 2 days was something else, as it would normally take 2 weeks. Shutra lowered his head as he was reprimanded. Felicia revealed that everyone was shocked, as so many irregular events had happened during the mission. Others might be trying to interrogate or spy on him if they had been sent in her place. Shutra, upon hearing his sister, asked, "So, that's why you came?" Blushing, Felicia looked away hastily, stammering, "It wasn't just because of that. I'm also curious about the temple and the caches' behavior. That's all." Shutra could notice Felicia's feelings and thanked her for worrying about him. Changing the subject, Felicia asked what he planned to do. The protagonist gave a good excuse, stating that he would go north to hunt the remaining caches. It was at that moment that Wild Eyes volunteered. "I will go with you. It is our duty. It makes no sense for me, a tribal chief, not to go personally." While Shutra scratched his head, wondering how to refuse, someone else volunteered to go. Felicia. The young dark elf believed that it would be much better to study the living caches than those who had been destroyed. Despite being worried, as claiming to go hunting caches had only been an excuse, Shutra accepted their decision. Barak watched his master for a moment and felt that things would somehow become complicated. A few days later, the formed group had already reached the north. A wolf roared furiously upon seeing intruders. Barak, who was allied with several centaurs, was in the front line. What Barak had expected had happened. Before they realized it, the entire expedition group had already been surrounded. Arrows were fired while axes and swords were brandished to deal with the ferocious wolves. A A wolf managed to get into the back line and jumped to attack Shutra from behind. Using the gauntlet's power to punch the wolf, Shutra still wondered where so many monsters had come from. He was tremendously irritated, as he thought they had defeated all the monsters a few days ago. New monsters began to appear. A type of flying creature flew over the group, attacking with sharp claws. The protagonist was shocked to see the monster, a geist, an abomination of the heavens. As things seemed to become problematic, Shutra used the power of nature, showing that monsters were not the only ones who could fly. Using the wind blessing skill, Shutra became extremely light and jumped high. Green Wind, who now accompanied Shutra in the form of a firefly, was surprised. "Wait, how can you use my magic?" Shutra replied by flying towards the geists. The flying monsters were shocked to see a human charge at them in the skies. Shutra used Explosion Fist to hit a still distracted flying monster. The punch sent the monster flying away, crashing into the trees. Smiling, Shutra provoked, "Stop interfering with my path and disappear." Green Wind seemed incredulous. The purpose of her existence had been corrupted. While the entire battle was happening, Daphne remained still in the middle of the clearing. The druid displayed an extremely frightened look. It was at that moment that a flying aberration appeared behind her, trying to grab her with its rear claws. A firm hand held Daphne by the shoulder at the last second and protected her. Barak used his large body to keep Daphne safe and knocked down the monster using his other hand, brandishing an axe. Felicia extended her hand, creating a necessary magic circle. With the power of the magic released by her, all the flying monsters fell, being buried all at once. When the battle ended, the sun was already close to setting. In that plain, an uncountable multitude of monsters lay on the ground after being killed. Unfortunately, among them were also some centaurs. Felicia looked around, asking Shutra to observe the faint purple aura that seemed to be around the monsters. Now that Felicia mentioned that energy, Shutra managed to perceive its existence. Felicia revealed to her brother that this was caused by a curse. They become stronger because of that aura, but their life force is drained equally. Also, the emotions they feel are clouded, which is why such a thing is called a curse. Felicia summarized everything she had said. This means someone is controlling them. The protagonist was surprised, as he had previously defeated the monster that seemed to be manipulating the entire horde. Barak entered the conversation, drawing the prince's attention. He showed how Daphne had been tense throughout the battle, which meant that this must have been her first time witnessing something so terrible. The protagonist realized it was true. Daphne seemed to have no experience in battles. Daphne was trembling, hugging herself while murmuring, "I can feel the fear of the spirits." The sinister power intensifies as we advance north. Green Wind approached Shutra. "My lord, I also feel a sinister energy coming from the north. There must be an entity that is the source of this aura." Felicia revealed that she believed they would discover more if they went north. Hearing her desire, Wild Eyes asked if they wouldn't like to check the observatory tower in the north. Shutra only planned to retrieve the White Suri, but things had become complicated. In the end, he agreed, and so they left before the sun set. When night fell, the group reached a giant tower amidst the trees. As soon as they climbed to the highest point of the tower, they could see. There was a large army of monsters gathered in the forest, about 200 to 300 of them, all around, a massive amount of energy. Felicia frowned, believing that the only being capable of gathering so many monsters must be an undead, and being high-ranking, it could even be a lich. Suddenly, Daphne fell to the ground, sitting down due to the shock. Barak hastily tried to find out what was happening. Daphne reassured him, but Felicia knew what was going on. Daphne had felt the sinister energy at a very short distance, and remembered how deeply affected she was, as she was a half-dryad. Felicia didn't believe they had enough strength to fight a lich, so she wanted them to retreat. However, before they had the opportunity to do so, Felicia felt a shock. An extremely disturbing energy was approaching. Felicia's eyes narrowed in surprise. While Shutra was asking who was approaching, a notification appeared for him. A map opened, showing their position in the forest and how countless monsters were beginning to gather around them. Barak quickly called Shutra's attention. He could see something flaming flying towards the tower in the distance. The protagonist gritted his teeth, shocked. He quickly shouted, "It's a trap! We need to get off the tower!" The tower was hit by the fireballs and began to collapse. Barak screamed in panic, as did other centaurs. In the sky, a group of monsters flew surrounded by dark energy.